What's up, everybody? Welcome to Punch Drunk Nerd. I am your host for the night, Miguel Sanchez. We are one host down. With me tonight is
Ed Ball.
Ed Ball. Sadly, Luis could not be joining us this week. He is in San Diego getting ready for Comic-Con. Not for us. He's got a job. But don't you worry, baby birds. We're trying to get that sweet info ahead of time. So as soon as we know some things, we'll be coming to you on our social medias. Make sure you follow us at Punch Drunk Nerd on all the socials, okay? So, you guys been listening long enough. You guys know how we do our podcast. We're going to talk about news of the week. We've got a featured discussion, and we're going to be letting you guys know what we're into. Also, I think Ed's got a little update on the summer movie wager, right, Ed?
That is right. That is correct.
That's right. Yeah, I'm gonna be throwing it to you a lot. You better be ready to go.
All right, I'm here for it.
So we're gonna get a quick update on the summer movie wager. And for those of you who are not ready for this, it's about to be a shit show. Okay, so we're gonna be giggling the entire night, most likely, or maybe we'll just be screaming. I don't know. Yeah. So let's get right into it. Ed, let's talk about the news of the week. Yeah. Hey, cheers. What are you drinking tonight?
Martinis. I've started to do recognize I have different reactions and temperaments with different drinks. White wine or rosé, just to give you an example, was the bear episode. And that was like a big pint of wine, a super pint, as Johnny did.
You're not supposed to do that, man.
No, yeah.
You're supposed to be the classy one of us.
Oh, no, it was cheap wine, so that was probably the problem. So, yeah, no, martinis, I get,
silly, little loosey, a little goosey.
A little loosey, but in a happy way. I get happy.
Okay, all right, good.
And I've got a backup beer on the ready.
Oh, thank God. All right.
And you're drinking beer?
Yeah, I got the Voodoo Ranger. Ooh, look at him. He's a
Imperial.
Skeleton.
Imperial.
Yeah, I don't know what that means, but it's tasty. Okay, alrighty. So we're actually, for a segment called News of the Week, we're actually getting to news from last week that we didn't get to talk about. So I threw it right here at the beginning so we can get rid of it just real quick. So Ed, I know you're pretty disappointed about this, but I don't know if you heard, Rockstar, the video game studio, they shelved the GTA 4 and Red Dead Redemption 1 remakes that they were planning on doing. Have you seen this? Have you heard about this?
I have heard about this because of the disappointing something or other that happened.
That's right. So they did a remake of the Grand Theft Auto trilogy last year, or maybe a little earlier this year. And it was done. They kind of shot it off to another studio, and it's a studio who is mainly do like mobile video games, like mobile phone games. So when you actually saw the trilogy remake, people playing it online or what have you, I mean, the visuals, they looked very cheap. I mean, it looked like something you would see on like a mobile video game,
Yeah.
And so because they were trying to sell that game for like the $60+ price point, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And it did so poorly, it got such negative reviews, they decided to shelve the GTA 4 remake and Red Dead Redemption. I was a little disappointed because Ed, you played a lot of GTA 4.
Yeah. And Red Dead Redemption 1.
I actually never played that game too hard. I bought it right before the sequel came out, and then I never really played it because I was like, I'll just do the sequel instead. But yeah, Fair enough. GTA 4, with the I'm sure you realize now, but like GTA 5 has been out for like, it feels like almost 10 years. I think next year will be 10 years. Can you believe that?
No, yeah.
And it's been re-released and re-released and re-released. And it's just like, I'm kind of burnt out on GTA 5 just as the rest of the community. And GTA 4 is arguably one of the best stories of the whole franchise. So I was super looking forward to playing that one again, especially with updated, when they say like they're doing like Last of Us Part 1, they're doing a remake for the PlayStation 5. Like that would be fun to play GTA 4 on a new console and have a good time with it. Now I'm just regulated to watching someone play it on YouTube. So anyway, a couple of notes that I want to point out. So not only did they shelve those remakes, but they are shuttering support for the Red Dead Online community. So Red Dead Redemption 2 has an online version of the game where, just like GTA, people create characters, they join into the world, they do shoot 'em ups, they get money, yada yada.
Yeah.
So they're actually shuttering support to that. I don't know if it's shutting down completely, as like you won't be able to access it anymore. I'm not quite sure. But what they did, players all around last week, was they held a Red Dead Online funeral where people just overloaded the servers. They jumped in. They were just like running around, instead of like running around shooting people like you would kind of anticipate. It was like just a big camaraderie, like community event. They were getting together. They were getting the bars. They were doing like bar fights. They were drinking, riding horses into the sunset, kind of saying, tipping the hat, if you will, saying goodbye to the Red Dead Online community. And I thought that was super cool. I wasn't a part of that because I didn't play Red Dead Online very much at all. But I just thought, you know what? That's those moments. You know what I mean?
I can appreciate that. Yeah. Like, which is like, you know, people take games seriously. So, you know, when you can just do that, like, which is probably what I would do in those games, just go around starting fights or whatever and heisting banks. Is that a word? Heisting?
Just the fact that they were all getting together and they were like generally treating each other like, okay, we're here to have a good time. Because you've heard the term griefer, you know what I mean? Like when you jump into an online server, griefer is just someone that's going to come around and make your life hell just because they can. Maybe they're super maxed out and you're not. Or you know what I mean, or you're going for a specific goal and they specifically, you know, attack you to make sure you don't get it. That's a griefer. And so instead of having this really shitty last experience, everyone came together and said, "Hey, hoorah, we're having a good time." So shout out to the Red Dead Online community. See you around. Okay.
Till next time.
That's right. So we're moving on. All right. So Ed. Dude, this next piece of news, I know you're going to be excited about this. There's a new Lego set out. Feels like
there is.
I love that. That's kind of part of our charm is we talk about Lego as much as we do. It's not just a one and done.
We're not just movies and games, baby.
Nah, baby.
We're TV and Lego too.
That's right.
All the medians.
Very minimal scope. Okay.
Yeah.
I was kind of excited about this one. They came out with an Office. NBC's The Office, Dunder Mifflin Office Lego set. It comes with several. Let me open this link so I don't just talk about my ass.
It comes with 1,164 pieces. It's coming out October 1st for $120.
Yes.
And it comes with 15 popular characters. So, I mean, that's essentially all the main cast. And you know, it's fun. Like it's got it comes apart, so you can have the whole office together, or you can take away like Michael's office or the like conference room, the break room rather. And it's got, I mean, true to Lego, they've got all of these little knickknacks, these little Easter eggs throughout the set, like the most notably the stapler and Jello, you know, and just all the kinds of shit that Lego rocks, basically. So yeah, and honestly, for as many minifigures as you get, and it's a pretty big set. Like that could be a lot of fun, and I think worth the price. It measures 12 inches wide. Okay, so maybe a foot, maybe not that big.
but how heavy is it?
Oh, you know, it doesn't say.
You know what? Weighty enough.
Weighty enough. I mean, that's 1,100 pieces. That's a lot. That's gonna.
So shout out to loyal listener Mike Lindauer, a good friend of ours. Ed, you work with Mike.
I do.
Mike doesn't strike me as a Lego guy at all, but what Mike does strike me as is a super big Office fan. He loves The Office.
Since day one, he has been.
Texted him immediately. I said, Mikey, look, we got...
buy this for Ed. Buy it for Ed.
No, that's not what I said. I was kind of hoping this would be the thing that got him into Legos. You know what I mean? But then he came back and said, no, he was going to ask you to build it for him.
Which I would do for the pleasure. It's
but
I feel like I thought he would at least maybe give that one a try of all things.
I can imagine him coming over and maybe you like guiding him through it. He just doesn't strike me as the person that's got the attention span, not attention span, but just like, you know, the energy to sit down and not do anything but Lego for a while. I know I could
build it. Yeah,
that's not for me.
Yeah, I would give him the minifigures to piece together. Like, hey, here's a bag of characters.
Oh, come on,
you match.
You go. Them. That's a perfect task.
That's a good starter.
He can feel
a good starter.
He can feel like he's contributing, and he gets his own little Lego set. So anyway, so our listeners are going to be on the edge of their seats waiting to find out if Mike Lindauer got that Lego Dunder Mifflin. Okay,
coming October. Yep.
Oh, just in time for your birthday. Maybe a little bit before his.
Exactly.
Ooh. All right. So we're moving on. Ed, you put this one in here. I'll let you kind of talk about it a little bit, but you are letting us know about the new Wes Anderson project. What's going on?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a Wes Anderson fan. How are you, Miguel? Would you consider yourself
a fan? Is like a strong word, like kind of hit and miss. There are definitely those movies that I think that I really enjoy, but I don't. While he's a director that I'm interested in and I keep my eye on when he's releasing new things, I definitely don't like clamor to the theater to see his. I was really excited to see the hotel one with
Grand Budapest.
Yeah, Grand Budapest with Ralph Fiennes. But I remember kind of walking away from it feeling like it wasn't my favorite. But anyway, yeah, would I see all these Wes Anderson movies? Absolutely, but I just might not jump to the theater to see them because I think Wes Anderson does lend himself to a great home viewing. You know what I mean?
Sure. Like, I remember his last one, The French Dispatch, was kind of like it was an anthology movie, which is always like literally hit and miss because you've got several stories within one story. So that was probably like the most where I was just like, this could have almost been a TV show, just like a Wes Anderson TV show. You know what I mean? Because that's how it felt.
Which would be a super dope vibe, like with HBO Max or something. Like
very unique, very clean.
Because I feel like he's the kind of director that obviously can handle a big budget, or I don't really know how much his budgets are normally, but he's a big enough director that he can handle something like that. But it's like, I feel like his creative ideas, they thrive in these small, intimate settings. And TV can be perfect for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, very like boxy.
Yeah.
Like clean. And, and he draws big casts. Like a lot of people want to work with him, which is the case with this next project, which is, I believe it's going into production and we'll probably see a release maybe next year. It's called Asteroid City. And basically today they just released a synopsis, which I will now read to you.
Let's hear it.
Asteroid City is a poetic meditation on the meaning of life. Ooh, Miguel.
Oh, God.
You ready for this one?
Let's hear it.
It tells the story of a fictional American desert town circa 1955 and its Junior Stargazer Convention, which brings together students and parents from across the country for scholarly competition, rest, recreation, comedy, drama, romance, and more. Now, the real big seller of this is the cast, which there's a lot of familiar faces, and then there's like some big new faces to the Wes Anderson fray, and that is so Jason Schwartzman, Scarlett Johansson, Tom Hanks, Jeffrey Wright, Tilda Swinton, Bryan Cranston, Ed Norton, Adrian Brody, Liev Schreiber, Hope Davis, Stephen Park, Rupert Friend, Maya Hawke, Steve Carell, Matt Dillon, Hong Chow, Willem Dafoe, Margot Robbie, Tony Revolori, Jake Ryan, Grace Edwards, Aristo Mihan, Sophia Lillis, Ethan Lee, Jeff Goldblum, and Rita Wilson.
Wow. Okay, listen, I'm not going to go over that entire list that you just said, but you definitely had several that caught my attention.
Like, Scarlett Johansson and Tom Hanks are two big debuts.
Yeah, I mean,
Wes Anderson.
But Scarlett Johansson, even though it's like her first time working with Wes Anderson, she definitely strikes me as someone that can fit into that world pretty easily. Like, I didn't see Jojo Rabbit, but like the fact that she fit into that world makes me think that she could do this no problem. Tom Hanks, though, that's a very big surprise, just because he doesn't work with Wes Anderson. Like, Wes Anderson has a very specific type of actor, and Tom Hanks is his own specific type of actor. You know what I mean? Sure. But at the same time, he knows how to come in and have fun with a role.
Exactly.
So that's super exciting. And the fact that you just mentioned Rita Wilson as well, I don't think I see Rita Wilson acting in a whole bunch of things. You know what I mean? And so the fact that she can also kind of be in here on her own. But you mentioned several familiar faces that have been in Wes Anderson movies before, but another one that kind of caught my eye was Bryan Cranston. Bryan Cranston would fit into a Wes Anderson world beautifully.
He was in his second animated movie, Isle of Dogs.
That makes sense. Then.
He was
okay.
Yeah, he was the lead in that one. Or lead. That does, like he was like the main dog.
That does sound familiar.
Yeah. But yeah, like to your point, I think like Wes Anderson, even if he doesn't keep certain people as regulars, he definitely brings big talent who want to try it out. And I think like George Clooney as Fantastic Mr. Fox, which
that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, and what a great role for George Clooney too. Like it really kind of played to his kind of style, whilst also adhering to the Wes Anderson vibe.
Absolutely.
So I feel like it could be like a really fun vibe. And then, like, yeah, these other regulars of his are generally exciting. Rupert Friend, he hasn't done a Wes Anderson film. I've been kind of like feeling the Rupert Friend thing.
Is
lately.
Rupert Friend the guy from My Best Friend's Wedding?
No, that's Rupert Everett.
But you saw where I went with that. Okay.
Yeah. Rupert Friend was most recently seen in Obi-Wan Kenobi. He was the Grand Inquisitor.
Oh, okay.
But he was most recently in The Death of Stalin. You remember that comedy that came out a couple of years ago?
Wasn't George Clooney in that movie too? No.
You're thinking of Hail Caesar, maybe. I don't know. But it was a comedy that came out a few years ago, and it was really good. And Rupert Friend was kind of like a scene stealer in that one. Okay. Anyway, so excited to see him on there. But yeah, like it's a stacked cast. Maya Hawke.
That was the other name, man. Maya Hawke. I feel like I hear her name all the time.
Blow up.
All the time.
Yeah.
I don't see her in a lot of things because I don't follow like her work, but she's constantly like the talk of the town. People are very excited about her. I mean, I'm trying to think if I've seen a movie she's been in yet. But
yes, you have. It's one of your recent favorites, in fact.
Is she in The Irishman? Or no, she's in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
There you go.
Okay. She's not the girl that hits on Brad Pitt, right?
No. She is one of the ranch girls.
The Manson, whatever.
Manson girls who at the end, as they're walking up the driveway,
she runs back to the car
and drives off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
She's at least in that movie. I haven't seen her in anything else, but she acts a lot like a mother in that film. I feel like
Uma Thurman. That also just clicked with me. Yep. Shrap. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. This is a very good cast, and you're absolutely right, Wes Anderson. I mean, that's one of the great things about like before you see the product, you already know. Okay, Wes Anderson, great cast. There's going to be some. You already kind of have an idea of what the visuals will look like. You know what I mean?
Yeah, very quirky. 1955.
I mean, come on. Let me ask you this before we move on. Just like real quick, we don't have to spend a lot of time on it. But like, what are some of your favorite Wes Anderson movies, just off the top of your head? No specific order or anything. Real cash.
The Royal Tenenbaums, The Grand Budapest, and probably Steve Zissou are my top three.
Wow. I haven't seen the Steve Zissou one in quite a minute. And Royal Tenenbaums, I mean, that was like my first introduction to Wes Anderson, but I saw it really late.
I love it. That one's held up.
I mean, that's like Gene Hackman's last movie, right?
Yeah.
Dude, that really is a pretty solid cast and story. My fave would probably be, you mentioned it already, but like Fantastic Mr. Fox. That's one that I actually saw in theaters, and I went in because like my cousin wanted to see it, and she had mentioned it, and I was just like, yeah, and I didn't see her very often, so I was like, yeah, I'm just excited to hang out, like let's go see a movie, and then it ended up being like one of my absolute favorites. I mean, it blew me away. The animation was great. What was the one that came out before Grand Budapest? Moonrise Kingdom.
Moonrise. I mean,
I love Moonrise Kingdom. That is probably my favorite Wes Anderson movie.
That's a great one, and again, a great cast. So
that was, I mean, just to go on a tangent. Sorry, Luis. Go on a tangent. I mean, that was like one of Bruce Willis's best movies, and shortly after or before, he also did Looper, which was also one of Bruce Willis's best movies. And I remember thinking, oh, we're about to get like a Bruce Willis renaissance. Like we're about to get, and then it's just so tragic that it didn't happen, and then he ended up having to retire. But those two performances, I mean, specifically Moonrise Kingdom, because we're talking about Wes Anderson. I loved Moonrise Kingdom. It was so good. I go back and watch it as many times as I can.
That's a great one. And yeah, you're totally right about Bruce Willis. Like, that would have been great to see him do a couple of Wes Anderson roles or something like that.
Even if it wasn't Wes Anderson, because I mean, he was doing a lot of these like direct to DVD, it felt like, type of movies. I don't even think we say direct to DVD anymore. We probably say direct to streaming. I'm so fucking old.
Yeah.
But it would have been nice if he had been able to work with another director or two after that moment and really kind of capitalized on that. And it's very tragic. He's not well, and wish him all the best. But
best of luck. Sorry, I just made a bunch of noise.
You're good. Since we're talking about synopsises right now of some pretty great stories, I'm trying to do a good Luis transition right now. And good Luis transition doesn't always mean no. He has fun with it. I'm going to talk about God of War Ragnarok. So we're talking about the sequel to the 2018 soft reboot of God of War Ragnarok. Luis is currently playing it. I check in with him every week. Unfortunately, he's not here, so I don't know where he is currently in his progress. I loved God of War. God of War Ragnarok is one of those that I am absolutely waiting for. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I just want to touch on a couple of things. So the synopsis of the next game is essentially that Ragnarok is coming, right? This prophesized battle. And so we see Kratos and Atreus again going back on a journey through all of the 9 realms this time to prepare for this big battle. One word that caught me by surprise, and this might be like the actual word in Norse, whatever mythology or whatever.
Yeah.
But they're calling it I'm going to say this. Thimble Winter. Thimble Winter is upon us. That is so God of War. You know what I mean? It just like fits into that thing. I would never, not in a million years, have ever said that word without reading this synopsis, though. Thimble
You mean winter.
Right? Like it's cold? No, it's thimble.
Thimble. It rocks you to your core.
But no, I tell you what, dude, I am so excited to jump back into this world. The game design on the last one, the world building, the fact that the story was so beautiful. I cannot wait for the sequel. This is like one of the most highly anticipated games of the year for me.
And when does it come out?
It comes out later this year. It's scheduled for November, like right before the holidays. Now, like I said, the last time we talked about this, I am one of those that it's like whenever they say, I've been burned enough times that whenever they say a game is going to come out on a certain day, and they really fucking commit to that date, it can always shift. I mean, you want to make money on the holiday season because Christmas is coming up, but games like this are going to bank no matter what day you release. So if we get closer to November and then they end up going, we're just going to have to hold off for another 6 months, it doesn't matter. We're all still going to play this game the moment it comes out. But no, currently it is on track for a November release of this year, 2022. And I will be here for it. That will definitely be one of the games that I put some money down on. And in fact, speaking about some money, Ed, I want to talk to you about the collector's editions of this game.
Ooh, okay.
So I know you don't play a lot of video games. What do you think about collector's editions? Do you know anything about collector's editions?
Only what I see in passing, and that it's. I mean,
tell me.
I don't know what it comes with. I assume it's like a collector's edition of a TV show or a Blu-ray collection is what I picture.
So generally in a collector's edition of a video game, you'll get like some sort of trinket or like some sort of bust or I'm saying doll. That's not the right word. I'm blanking on the word that I'm trying to say, and I'm sure
minifigure.
Like a minifigure of the character or of like maybe like some sort of poster or thing like that.
Sure.
And the whole point is you pay extra so you can get these collectible items. Like if you think about like shout out to Chase from the Movie Gap, like you think about his setup, you know what I mean? He's not only does he have all the movies, but he's got all these like trinkets and things and like Funko Pops and things like that he puts around. So it's for people that like to display collectible items from the franchises that they love. I am not a collector's. That is not who I am. I am so much more of I just want to play the game kind of guy. When you hear the prices, you'll probably be the same. Okay. So the God of War Ragnarok, there's 2 collector's editions. One is called the Collector Edition, and the other one is called the Jotunheim or the Jotun something edition.
Sure.
So the Collector's Edition is going for $200, and the Jotun version is going for $260. And I know I didn't write down everything that comes in. I kept it very brief because, like, again, these are not for me. And most people that are into collector's editions, they already know what's on these lists already. But I'm going to give you just a brief rundown of what they have. First off, for $200 or $260, Ed, you will get no physical disc of the game. You will be given a fun like steel book, you know what I mean, display box. Kind of like when you buy like Blu-rays, you know what I mean, that are in steel cases, you know what I mean? But it won't come with a disc. It's only going to come with a downloadable code for the game. So you'll get a digital copy of the game, but no physical copy, which for some people that matters. Both the 200 and the 260, you're going to get a bunch of trinkets like dice sets, cards or something, you know what I mean? You're going to get, both of them are going to come with a 16-inch replica of Thor's hammer. I don't know if you remember last week we made Luis get off the game because he didn't know this yet, but Thor is going to be,
that's going to show up.
Spoiler, bro. Sorry. I know you're going to edit this.
Yeah, don't listen to this.
30 minutes. Okay, I'm going to tell him.
32 minutes, yeah.
So Thor, you know, I told you at the end of the very end of the game, he like reveals the hammer and that's all you see of him. So you're gonna get a replica of Thor's hammer, 16 inches.
Mjolnir.
I assume that's what they're calling it, right? Right. But with the 260, so they're both versions are going to come with all of those things I just said. The 260 version is going to come with a vinyl, a record that has songs from the game, as well as like a couple extra trinkets that you can't get unless you get the 260 version. Like again, some more dice. And things like that, as well as a cloth map of the 9 realms, which could be kind of cool. Like if you like to display things, you know what I mean? There's a couple of display items that come with this. Yeah. I would not pay either of these costs for a video game. I think we're in the next generation now, Ed. So PS5 and Xbox Series X games, they're already going for like $70+, just like base editions. And already that's a lot of money for a video game. So, you know, you and me, we're both parents. Like I'm not, I don't think I'm ever getting the approval to spend this kind of money on just one video game. So
like, I like Lego, but that's like few and far between, you know, like I put money aside for that for leisure, you know,
these are collector's items, you know what I mean? And for people that do, you know what I mean? I'm not knocking them. These are the people that they like to display these things. And
we all have
our vices.
We all have yeah, exactly. And especially like if you're a hardcore gamer, like I can appreciate the. I mean, obviously, I've held on to my DVDs and Blu-rays, so I can't fault anybody. But fuck me, $260.
But then on top of that, you're not getting...
I mean, that hammer better have the power of Thor.
You feel like the lights better flicker when I hold that shit in my hand. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like does it light up? Like, do I have to be worthy to pick it up? Like,
absolutely.
$260.
I will say I might not be buying the collector's edition of this game, but I will absolutely be getting God of War Ragnarok when it comes.
I'm excited, and like that's definitely a game that would pull me back into gaming. I feel like. I mean, and there's a very short list of games that I need to play. I know that, but that would definitely be one of them because I love that kind of mythology and stuff like that.
Love the God of War series as the soft reboot that they came out with in 2018. I mean, it's currently so much fun, and refreshes a lot of things. I would say if you wanted to play this game, if tomorrow you came into possession of a PS5 and you were like, I'm going to play God of War Ragnarok, I would have to insist you played God of War first. Okay.
Absolutely.
Because you would get so much more out of that story. 100%. I had something. Oh, I did want to say this. God of War Ragnarok, Thor. So Thor is going to be in the game. Do you know who's going to be voicing Thor?
Ooh, I do not.
Hold on a second, because now I don't actually know his name. I was about to tell you what he was from, and then I was like, "Oh shit! I better." It's his name is Ryan something. Hang on a second. Why the fuck am I blanking on what was that Denzel Washington football movie? Remember the Titans. Remember the Titans.
Ryan Gosling?
Hurst. Ryan Hurst. He plays in Remember the Titans. He's the guy that gets in the car accident. He's like the Bertrand or whatever.
Yeah, who hasn't been around for a minute.
He had a run on the original series Sons of Anarchy, and he also had a brief run in a couple of seasons of Walking Dead recently. Right. So, and I think it was because of those two shows that he was still like very fresh on people's minds, and so he's going to be playing Thor in this game. And much like Thor in Endgame, he is a hefty version of the character. So, I'll share some art with you a little later, and maybe we'll post some on our socials.
On our Instagram,
right, at Punch Drunk Nerd, and you'll get, because earlier this year they released some character photos of each of the characters. I
vaguely remember that because they had a picture of that giant wolf, which I'm blanking on, but
absolutely.
Okay.
So we won't spend much time on it, but yeah, God of War Ragnarok coming out, collector's editions, you guys get them. You already know that scalpers are going to be grabbing those things up, so make sure to be ready on release day. And one more little bit of news. Joaquin Phoenix coming back. Joker 2, we've talked about this already. You know, they're making a sequel. You knew this. Joaquin...
Folie à Deux.
That's right. With the rumored, I don't think it's been confirmed 100% yet, but Lady Gaga is going to be in it, and it's going to be a musical. And Joaquin Phoenix is reportedly earning $20 million to come back for this sequel.
Yep.
Wow.
I mean, I feel like, after the billy that the first one made off of that tiny-ass budget, pay the man. I feel like, we've seen Johnny Depp and Robert Downey Jr. and The Rock get paid ridiculous amounts.
I mean, honestly, $20 million.
And we're talking about Joaquin Phoenix. Like, whoever saw that coming? Whoever saw him coming back for a sequel?
And $20 million almost seems a little low. You know what I mean? Like when you think about it, you just mentioned, you know what I mean? Johnny Depp coming back for Pirates of the Caribbean or Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. Like every time they came back, they made more and more and more money. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. made like how many millions of dollars to do the last two Avengers movies? You know what I mean? So,
and I feel like he got like a ridiculous amount for showing up in Homecoming.
He was on screen in Spider-Man Homecoming for like less than 10 minutes. You know what I mean? And he basically made like $1 million a minute that he was on screen.
Yeah. Which, play those cards.
Absolutely.
We're suffering inflation right now. So
these
Joaquin,
actors
go get it.
need pay, okay? So shout out Joker 2 coming out, I guess. I mean, probably not next year. Ow. Sorry.
No, that's got to be...
My cat just attacked me. Okay.
No, I figured.
She's not even supposed to be in this room. Get out of here. Okay, so we're moving on. That's the news of the week. You guys, we did it. That wasn't too bad.
We did that.
So...
Me and the other guy.
All right. Let's see. We're talking about, just real quick before we move on to our summer box office update, we've got a couple of real quick things. Coming soon, Lightyear coming to Disney Plus, August.
The number one movie of the year.
Coming to Disney Plus, August 3rd. Not much to say on that other than
We'll probably watch it again.
We will absolutely watch it in my house. Like I said, my kid had a great time. Yeah. We'll watch it because he enjoyed it. But
Lily loved it.
This is definitely normally a movie that I would have just rather have waited but we had a good time in the theater. So Lightyear, Disney Plus. You got a Disney Plus account? Keep it active because August 3rd, Lightyear. I just want to comment real quick. I don't remember if we talked about this when we talked about Lightyear. But that whole controversy about like the lesbian kiss or whatever, I never even saw the kiss when we saw the movie. Like I was watching the screen, but it happened so quick that at the end of the movie, I was like, God damn, did they cut it from the movie? Like I didn't remember it at all. The same exact thing happened to me back when Janet Jackson had her costume malfunction.
Tit.
I missed it 100%. I didn't say tit, by the way. I just want to point out.
I'm sorry.
I said costume malfunction. I'm a gentleman. But same thing. It happened, and I was watching when it happened, and I completely missed it. So I guess I don't know what's happening. I'm just not fully paying attention in these movies.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, it was a blink and you miss it moment. It was in a montage, but yeah, people get riled up, and that's why. I don't know. I mean, Pixar's great for being what it is, but you always feel like Disney's kind of ashamed of them, the way they kind of brush them to the side with their releases.
I guess. I
thought you were going to talk about the quote-unquote controversy that, like, the bullshit that Tim Allen was talking about.
What? We're not even going to talk about it. Who cares? I'm moving on. So, Lightyear, you guys coming to Disney Plus August 3rd. Something else coming up in the beginning of August, Ed.
Ooh, that would be Miguel, Game of Thrones?
No, I was just gonna say my birthday. Okay, cool. So
God, you and every other fucking Leo in my life, let me tell you.
I think it's so funny that you bring that up all the time because like August is your like stressful month of having to like please all these people. It's March.
Because like my parents, who are both Leos,
because they're on the tail end of July.
26th, the 29th, the 8th, and the 10th. That's what my month looks like.
That's a tough couple weeks.
It is.
I have a tough couple weeks in March. I have, my wife's birthday, our wedding anniversary, and our son's birthday, all within like 7 days of each other.
And St. Paddy's Day on the same day as your wedding. So
That's right. And clearly that takes precedent.
Twice the drinking, hey.
I love a green beer. Okay, so we're talking about trailers now. So that coming soon, we were talking about Lightyear. Let's talk about something else that's coming even sooner.
Yeah.
That's not true because it's coming out later this year. But trailers, we're talking about, man, Ed, you and I were kind of getting really hyped about this. I feel like Luis maybe as well, but the new Lord of the Rings show on Amazon, Rings of Power.
Yes.
They released a trailer last week. And when I tell you, dude, I don't consider myself like a huge Lord of the Rings fan, but I really do like those movies. I have a really great time when I do watch them. And this show just felt like I'm in that exact same world again.
Totally.
Just set prior, much like the prequel to Game of Thrones, which we'll talk about in a second. But I mean, we were watching this trailer and they were showing all of these visuals and it was just like, I feel like I've been there. I feel like I've been there.
Yeah.
And the story itself seems really cool. I love that, we, in this sense, I love that we're getting these, different characters in a world we already know.
Yeah.
But we don't have to live up to any expectations. We can be new, which I guess is also a point that I'll talk about with Game of Thrones, the prequel, in a second.
Yeah.
But no, what did you think about this trailer?
No, I agree. I just, leading up to this, I feel like I've mentioned on a few podcasts now, I've been getting increasingly excited for this show.
Absolutely.
And this trailer just kind of reaffirmed my excitement. Like you said, it kind of just like, it felt almost seamlessly joined and connected to the original trilogy. Like visually, just like the song that they use throughout the trailer, the dialogue that we get, the visuals, the blend of practical and visual effects, like very like mystical, very alluring almost. You just kind of get swept away with it. And I think I told you this, like I haven't read the Silmarillion, which is what they're basing this off, which is just basically the entire lore of the Lord of the Rings and Middle Earth, essentially, like the history. And so they have a lot to draw on. I'm starting to think like we're going to see like a turn, like obviously we meet Galadriel, who's later in the movies played by Cate Blanchett.
That is the same character, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's good to know.
But she's like, elves live for like 1,000 years or so. Yeah. So she has seen all of this, and I really think like throughout the trailer you see hints of a meteor or an asteroid coming to Middle Earth. I want to say that's the birth of Sauron.
So they do have a really great shot in the trailer. I don't want to overtalk what you're talking about, but
I mean, it is in the trailer, so no spoilies. And
they definitely
I don't know that for sure.
They allude to it.
Yeah.
No, because I mean, there's that one very quick shot where they kind of like shape the eye. You know what I mean?
Around a guy who clearly, like in kind of like a meteor. What do you call those?
Like when it makes the hole, like a crater.
Crater, thank you. The hole in the ground. When you throw something at the ground and it makes a we're gonna make it. And I mean that's just an assumption, but they are like focusing on the rings of power, and that's when Sauron, like around that time, he creates the One Ring
to rule them all.
Right, and of course the ring goes like after the fight for Middle Earth, that ring disappears for like 500 years. So, you know, the time span that jumps in The Lord of the Rings is vast. But regardless, I'm very excited. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting parallels because we're going to talk about another show, obviously, that
kind of similar. There's kind of a similar track. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
One of my favorite lines from the trailer was, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it was something to the effect of like before like the first sunlight, there was already life on Earth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just like to give an idea of like the scope of, you were talking about like how all these time jumps and years that are included in the story of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
It's just such a really gripping line. You know what I mean? Like we were already here doing this, you know, before the Earth really started. And I'm so excited. I am more excited. I'll go ahead and say it now. I am more excited for this Lord of the Rings TV show than I am for the Game of Thrones prequel.
Here. I'm
sure
that's what I was going to say. Yeah, I mean, we might as well just talk about that
Let's do it.
So today they released the full trailer for the House of Dragons, the Game of Thrones prequel, which centers around the Targaryen dynasty. A couple of 100 years, I think, before the events of Game of Thrones. I mean, I will say, it looks very Game of Thronesy.
Yes, 100%. There were several shots in the trailer to that release today alone that felt very just like we are running through the motions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've seen this shot. Even the story itself, I'm a little concerned about. Like my main nitpicky point, and listen, I'm going to be super critical of this show, mainly because, like everyone else, I was disappointed with the Game of Thrones finale and where they took the characters and they did the story.
Sorry, my dog is just drinking very loudly.
I hear.
You do hear him?
Just a little bit. Your mic is so good.
I know. You can hear like a mouse fart across the room.
But anyway. I mean, you know, with this, you're getting a very similar storyline. Not only is it, a woman coming into power, and what does that mean? But it's another Targaryen, and so to me, it's just like I'm way down to see that storyline. But are we just trying to like rehabilitate the name of Game of Thrones?
Like the best parts of Game of Thrones,
and try to do it again without coming out and just saying we're re-releasing Game of Thrones or reshooting. You know what I mean?
Right. Basically,
so listen, Game of Thrones is one of my favorite shows. I'm highly disappointed with the way it ended, but it's still one of my favorite shows that I go back to pretty frequently.
It's hard not to ignore that like 5 or 6 years, however you want to rate it,
where
like we were all very invested,
gripped, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, so if they want to come back and they want to try again, I totally understand. And do I want to get back into that world? A little bit. So
yeah.
I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm not the biggest Matt Smith fan, but he looks like he's having fun in the role.
I mean, the man screams Targaryen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Put him in any movie. Oh yeah, Matt Smith. He's the bad guy.
I will say the lead in Game of Thrones, House of Dragons, whose name I don't have pulled up right in front of me. I'm sorry. I thought it was actually Hunter. Oh God, what's her name? You don't watch Euphoria, do you?
No.
So there's a trans actor on Euphoria, and she looks just like this lead character in this new Game of Thrones show. In fact, they did like a teaser trailer a few months back, and I even asked Kristen, I was like, "Is that the girl from Euphoria?" Like shout out. Is
she a Targaryen?
The one who is supposed to like take power.
The daughter instead of
Yeah.
I know who you're talking. I'm afraid I don't know her name either. I'm sorry,
but I'll reference it here later when I pull up the actual notes. But the girl in Euphoria, I mean, she's almost a spitting image of this character in Game of Thrones, and so I thought that was going to be amazing for her because she's like absolutely blowing up right now. She's one of my favorite. Yeah. She's one of my favorite characters on Euphoria.
That very much. I mean, to its credit, I guess. I mean, they are clearly making an effort to diversify the world of Middle Earth.
That is something I wanted to talk about. Thank you for bringing it up because Lord of the Rings, the Amazon show Rings of Power, is also doing something similar. Which there's a lot of conversation on the internet right now about the fact that there's black actors playing these like Middle Earth roles. With Game of Thrones, the conversation is, well, they're straying from the book, like Targaryens, you know what I mean? And there's all this lore, and of course, there's like all this lore and story and this and that. Targaryens are like known for like incest and like keeping the bloodline pure, so it's hard to justify black actors playing these roles. But the same point that I want to make about Lord of the Rings, I'll make about Game of Thrones, even though I'm more excited about Lord of the Rings, is shut the fuck up. Like, I don't care. Like, I don't care that non-white actors are playing like whatever traditional white roles. You know what I mean? Like, it's Middle Earth. There's dragons. There's fantasy. And I know that's something that Peter Dinklage said about the last season of Game of Thrones. Like, get over it. Like, it's just a show. But kind of agree in this moment. Like, these actors were hired to play these roles. I have to assume, you know what I mean? They're not spending this much money on each episode to hire shitty actors. So,
no.
You know what I mean?
Hopefully, they're just selecting actors that play best to that part.
Yeah, and you know what? The biggest complaint that I can actually agree with is the fact that the wigs on Game of Thrones, the House of Dragons, the wigs look so terrible. Like, you can tell
all these
they're not
bleach blonde wigs.
Yeah, and for a show that is like banking off the success of Game of Thrones, and so you have to admit they're probably putting a good amount of money into each episode.
Yeah, I mean, look at those dragons.
I imagine the costumes and wig department will look a little bit better in season 2 if we get a season 2.
Well, it's just kind of like, remember how we had to wait like 5 seasons to see like a full-grown dragon?
Yeah, and a budget. You know what I mean? Like Game of Thrones.
And the fact that they're throwing it at the trailer, they're just like, oh yeah, look at our dick. Yeah.
So I'll say that
it's going to be. So this comes out just a couple of weeks, rather it starts airing on a weekly basis. I don't know how they're going to release the Lord of the Rings. I should call it the Rings of Power, but I don't know how they're going to.
So I'm watching The Boys. I'm pretty sure Amazon does big shows weekly. So I imagine this is going to be one of those. And streaming shows, really, Disney Plus is doing it as well. Netflix kind of does it sometimes. Although Netflix is much more of like a binge platform. Like, we're releasing...
They'll separate seasons, maybe.
Yeah, but I do notice that a lot of these other streaming platforms are coming around to just like the weekly releases as opposed to, throwing it out all at once.
How else are you going to build that hype, right?
Yeah, and it's from a lot like logistics standpoint. Like, how do you keep subscribers? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You do it by releasing things weekly over, piecemeal, so that you have to stay if you want to keep watching it. So listen, Rings of Power, Game of Thrones, House of Dragons, of the two of them, like we said, I'm much more hyped about Rings of Power. But because I am a Game of Thrones fan, I'm definitely looking forward to this prequel, and I will be watching it. You will be hearing my thoughts. Okay. Ed, tell me a little bit about this last trailer I want to talk about.
Yeah.
You posted this.
I did.
Coming out November 18th. It's called She Said. Tell me about it.
Prime Oscar season fillers here. This is called, She Said, starring Carey Mulligan, Zoe Kazan, Andre Braugher, Samantha Morton, Patricia Clarkson. And it's basically the story about the journalists who led to the subsequent arrest of Harvey Weinstein. And obviously the hashtag #MeToo movement. So yeah, it basically this is not the same, obviously, but it just occurred to me today that if you wanted to draw a comparison, it's very much like Spotlight was. It seems like and not in a negative way at all. It's just that, if people need like a way to pick it up, that's how it looks. It's just a journalistic, investigation story. These journalists start following up on these repeated accounts against Harvey Weinstein in the movie industry, like meetings in hotel rooms and stuff like that, and how basically everyone didn't want to talk about it at that time. So anyway, it's got a great cast. I love Carey Mulligan. She's been doing some incredible work lately, and like I said, this is kind of like prime Oscar season stuff. So I mean, the trailer looked good. It looks like it's going to be a lot of good performances. I hope it's a compelling film, and it'll be in theaters
November
18th. So, keep your eye out for that one. Solid. I mean, I thought the trailer looked good. Did you get to watch it? Or
I didn't get to watch the trailer, but since we're talking about Carey Mulligan for just a quick second.
Yeah.
I did want to say I didn't finish this movie, but I did watch most of that. What was that movie she did where she was like trapping
Promising Young Women,
where she was like,
I love that movie.
Getting creepers at the bar, like kind of caught up, and you know what I mean, trying to expose them or punish them in some kind of way.
Yeah,
I thought that was even though I didn't finish it, I thought she was nailing that performance.
Fierce. She's fierce in that, and she's I love her.
And Carey Mulligan, I don't really feel like she's ever been in a movie where I thought, the ones that I have seen, where I thought she's absolutely mucking this up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Carey Mulligan seems to show up and just nails these roles.
She's one of those like quieter actresses who just pops up in a really good movie every now and again. From like Shame, she was in The Great Gatsby, obviously.
Love Great Gatsby.
Gatsby. Like you said, Promising Young Woman. She was in that movie
Drive.
She was in Drive. Yeah, she was in that Paul Dano movie, Wild. I think it was called Wild, something like that, with Jake Gyllenhaal, and she's great in all of them. That's the thing. So, if anything, I'd say she's almost underrated. But Promising Young Woman, I feel like should have got the Oscar for. But
I think she's underrated. I think she's underrated in a mainstream sense.
Yeah.
Like mainstream audiences aren't going to clamor to Carey Mulligan,
right,
for some reason.
Absolutely.
But she's far from underrated.
Yeah.
Like every role she puts forth, like most, she's critically acclaimed.
Yeah, people don't generally argue that she's a bad actress or anything like that.
Never.
No. So
to say that, I'd be down to watch. I'd be down to watch pretty much anything Carey Mulligan's in.
And get ready for just Oscar season in general, folks. This is Ed. This is when Ed starts.
You will be leading,
being more obnoxious. Yeah.
Ed, I got something you can lead real quick. Why don't you tell us about the summer box office? What's the update? How are we doing?
All right. So yeah, we're we've had several big releases now. Top Gun Maverick is still leading the way. It's currently at $617 million dollars
domestically.
Domestic. It is over $1 billion worldwide. And it for however many weeks now. I mean, this movie is still at number 4, which is pretty crazy. Just this last weekend. Jurassic World Dominion is still holding up at 2 with $359 million. That movie is seriously kind of like underplaying, and I mean rightfully so. They're all trash. But it's currently sitting at number 8 this last weekend. Minions: Rise of Gru is still making a lot of money. It's at $262 million domestically.
Man.
Yep.
Oh man, I'm sorry. I'm gonna let you keep talking. Sorry, I'll let you finish.
Okay. Thor: Love and Thunder stuck at number 1 this week, but it had a 68% drop from last week. That was
incredible. We were talking about that privately this week. You know what I mean? It's just word of mouth has absolutely kicked that movie's ass. And I'm not going to talk too much. I'll let you keep going.
Yeah, well, I mean, but yeah, considering it started at 140 something million and then made 40 something million its second weekend, like, ouch.
It's not good.
No. And then Lightyear, which we just referenced, rounding out its theatrical run. It's not even in the top 10. It's still at 115. Elvis is still kind of doing pretty good, and I'm going to talk about this movie more later because I finally saw it. But I'll say the theater that we were in was pretty full on a Sunday afternoon.
Did they have a good time?
Yeah, I think so. I was getting good vibes. And that's currently at 106 million domestic, and it came in at number 5 this last weekend. Black Phone, which also hit streaming, was still doing okay at 72 million at number 7. Bob's Burgers is holding at 31, and it's probably not going to make much more than that. Where the Crawdads Sing, which just released last week, and I believe was kind of high, or is somewhere on Luis's list, as I recall. It came in at number 3 as a new release, at 17 million. Paws of Fury, which also just opened, came in at 6.2 million at number 6. And then Miguel, your friend Marcel Vachel with Shoes On, it's well into its $1.6 million.
Good for Marcel.
But you know what? That movie is hitting almost at 100%, and it's opened into more theaters. I think it's going to maybe build momentum.
I will say this. I don't care where it lands. It was not in my top 10 because I felt like it wasn't going to be a hot movie.
No.
But it's one of the most endearing characters I've seen. I actually haven't seen the movie yet, but just from the trailer alone, I mean, I remember sitting there going, "This is one of those movies that I can't wait to watch." I mean, it. Yeah.
No, I didn't even know about the short that this is based on.
It's based on something. Yeah, right. Yeah.
That came out nearly 10 years ago. So, no, I mean, to be honest, I kind of fell in love with the trailer too. And I do hope to see it, but it's not like one of those movies where it's just like, oh shit, I need to knock it off my list. But
well, I mean, we didn't talk about it, but there was some news this week that HBO is getting like a slew of A24 movies.
Yes,
which makes me think that Marcel the Shell is going to eventually end up on HBO Max.
Totally.
Whether it's in the first initial release of the 20-something movies that they're getting, probably not, but I imagine that HBO will be snagging that up. Just want to talk about just a couple of really quick points before we move on. Obviously, like, I had Jurassic Park over Top Gun because I thought, based on the performance of the last 2 movies,
absolutely.
But I just have to say, my heart is with Top Gun. I'm glad it's number 1. It's been one of my favorite movies of the summer so far. I had a lot of fun. I haven't seen Jurassic World yet. Weird note, I did see that Amazon is doing like one of those like movies in theaters promo where they'll let you like rent or buy it. You can rent this movie
for $20. I want to
say for $20 and you can buy it for $30. Yeah. And I was just like, no fucking way.
I might wait for like $5 or just when it hits HBO Max.
I needed to be free. I needed to be on whatever streaming service I have.
Yeah, I mean, the second one of The Lost Worlds was free on HBO Max. I still haven't watched it all the way.
That was the movie that I turned to Kristen and in the theater at the end of that movie. And I've said this a million times. I turned to her and I said, we are never watching a Jurassic World movie in theaters again because this was so bad.
Yeah.
As far as Minions go, I had Minions on my list, but it was like in the 6-7 range.
I had it at number 4 or 3.
I wish I would have bumped it up. I had Lightyear a little bit higher than Minions, not number 1.
Yeah.
But I did have Lightyear higher because I thought it would perform better. But I did not.
I think we all did. I
did not realize the like meme culture that was going to take over and get Minions so high.
Oh boy!
And I mean, just to round out my quick thoughts, is I had Thor as my top 3 because it's a Marvel property. It's coming off hot off of Ragnarok, which was a big hit. You thought this movie was going to perform well, and it just, man, like I said, word of mouth really kicked its ass.
Yeah.
Oh, one final thought. Bob's Burgers was one of my I don't know how it's going to end up playing out at the end. Bob's Burgers was one of my wild card movies.
Sure.
I didn't actually have it on the top 10, but I did have it on a wild card.
I think I had it at 10 or 9, maybe.
I didn't. I mean, it's sitting at 10, 9, 8 on our list right now.
Yeah.
You know, that seems kind of where I would expect it, because not everyone, even though Bob's Burgers has a pretty good following, it's not necessarily fill the theaters.
And also, it's not a theatrical experience.
No, you can watch that.
And it is available on Hulu now for anybody curious to see that movie. And it's a lot of fun. Sarah and I already separately watched it again since it's been on Hulu.
There you go.
But because the energy is just it's still very much Bob's Burgers. It's just like a long drawn out episode, and it's got some fun numbers. It's got a slew of jokes throughout. It's just a lot of fun. It's the characters you love. I mean, the fact that it made 31 million domestically is pretty.
That's pretty incredible.
It's pretty great. And it's not. It's hard to compare them to The Simpsons just because TV and media is so different these days
now. But that is kind of, to your point, you're trying to say it's kind of like a modern day Simpsons. Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah, maybe not culturally, but you know what I mean? It's just okay, so after a certain amount of time, after a long running and a popular fan base, which Bob's Burgers definitely has, there's definitely an affection for it. Yeah, maybe and it took 20 years for The Simpsons, so whatever. But it was a fun movie. Was it anything spectacular? Absolutely not. But I think if you were a diehard fan and you went into that movie, you wouldn't leave disappointed, because
fair enough.
They don't play with expectations. They know what it is, and they just lean into that, and that's fine.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing it on Hulu. Even though I have Hulu with ads.
Yeah.
Now listen, Ed, we're going to talk about, there's some movies left to come on the summer box office.
Yes.
I'm going to kind of fly through some of these, but I'm going to talk about one of them. So give me just a quick sec, okay?
Do it.
So a couple of movies left to come. We have Super Pets, the DC animated movie with the superhero dogs. Brad Pitt's Bullet Train. The A24 Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. And then the Idris Elba movie right at the end of the summer, Beast. So several movies coming out. I know I did think about Beast on my list, but I ended up holding off simply because it was just the last day of our summer wager. But there is a movie coming out this week that I'm very excited about, and I'd love to talk about just a little bit with you. Is Jordan Peele's Nope coming out this weekend? Dude, I am so excited for this movie.
Yeah, me too. The early word of mouth has been promising. I've tried to avoid reviews.
Yeah.
But I mean, Jordan Peele has already established himself as a director that brings people to the theaters just because you don't know what he's cooking up.
Yeah, he's got something up his sleeve, and you want to be a part of it. Absolutely. I actually missed Get Out in a theater experience. I watched it on an iPad, which sounds terrible to say, but that was I was blown away. I remember we were with me and Kristen. We were in Jamaica with Sarah and Luis, and we were just one night just watching it on Luis's iPad. And I mean, in the big moments, they had already seen it, and they were just waiting to see how we were going to react. And I mean, it was absolutely one of those movies that I wish I had been in the theaters for. I didn't see Us in theaters again, but
I didn't see that one in theaters.
Another really solid Jordan Peele movie.
It was.
So Especially when you're talking about this one. You're talking about this one dealing with aliens. You already know Miguel Sanchez is ready to go. Okay, I'm super excited for this movie.
Aliens with a Jordan Peele twist. I feel like
let me see that shit. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Kind of the same way that Shyamalan did Aliens with Signs. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Let me see you play with the genre. Let me see what you do with it, because I already know it's going to be hyped. Ed, you posed a good question. Sorry, I'm kind of cutting you off. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Yeah, no, that's yes. I just thought it would be fun, since we already have like a summer box office betting thing going on.
Sure.
So we were just talking about Get Out, and Us. Get Out opened to 33 million on its debut, and obviously went on to make quite a bunch of money. And then Us opened to the tune of 71 million. However, both movies ended up making the same amount, roughly, worldwide overall. It was like 265 million or something like that, or maybe more than that, but like almost exactly next to each other. So I thought it'd be fun to see what you think, and I'd be willing to bet on this too. What you think it's gonna rake in its opening weekend?
Interesting,
considering
so
there's a lot of like moving parts. Like, we're out of the pandemic, but it's a Jordan Peele movie. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the marketing has been pretty good on this film.
Yeah. So just extrapolating some data out of what you've posted here, I have to assume that Nope is going to have a higher box office opening weekend than the previous two movies. So if the last movie came out to $71 million for their opening weekend, I would assume it would be 80 plus, somewhere in maybe the $90 million range. Okay. You know what I mean? And I might be wrong, you know what I mean? Because the pandemic really has, like, I feel like, stolen a lot of billion-dollar movies away from us, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But because audiences are like clamoring for another Jordan Peele movie, and the fact that this one looks so amazing, and you and I were talking about it before we started, but like only really the trailer that played before Thor, that was the only time I ever felt like they're showing a little too much. Basically, they've been playing that same trailer through most movies. So there's a hype, there's an anticipation built to it. So I definitely think it's going to be $80 to $90 million range at least.
Give me a number. Give me a number.
All right. Just for you, Baby Bird, I'm gonna go ahead and hit you with a number. If I'm wrong, listen, let me know at Punch Drunk Nerd.
I'm gonna make a number too. So I just want to.
I'm gonna solidly say $90 million. Like
90. All right.
90 on the dot.
Cool. All right. I don't think that's a bad guess either, because I'm torn between either going between Get Out and Us or going high. Like, is this movie really just gonna attract people? You know what? No. I'll raise the stakes. I'm gonna go 100.
That's a solid range, dude. I would love for opening weekend to make somewhere between 90 and 100. First off, obviously you have Daniel Kaluuya coming back, which has become Jordan Peele just said recently, or maybe it was revealed recently, that Jordan Peele said that Daniel Kaluuya was his Robert De Niro. You know what I mean?
Which I love.
I mean, come on. I love that. Daniel Kaluuya, without that comparison alone, you know what I mean? He is a phenomenal actor. Every time he jumps on screen, you just can't help but be invested. I was very disappointed to find out he's not going to be in Black Panther 2, although I'm still holding out that he's lying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But also, not only Daniel Kaluuya, you know who else is blowing up right now is Keke Palmer. Like, Keke Palmer is absolutely drawing attention. So the fact that the two of them together on a Jordan Peele movie.
Can I ask, what else has she done?
Keke Palmer is a child actor. So she did a lot of stuff when she was younger. And now that she's like, getting a little bit older, she's getting into some more acclaimed roles. I know I just watched something recently where a few years ago she was on like a series, like a CIA series. But she, oh gosh, I'm blanking on it. She just did something before this. She's got a lot of internet presence. She trends a lot on Twitter and Instagram. She is very active on social media, but she's not just like this social media personality. Like she's got a very charismatic, I don't want to say bubbly sounds wrong, but you know what I mean? She's got like this energy that when you see her, you want to see more from her. So the fact that...
And you want to be on that level.
Exactly. And so the fact that she's teaming up with Dana Kaluuya and Jordan Peele, I think this is going to be phenomenal, dude.
And shout out to Steven Yeun.
Yes.
Too.
Yes.
He was nominated for Best Actor the same year that Daniel Kaluuya won Best Supporting Actor.
Good.
So, yeah, and based off of Minari, which is what Steven Yeun was nominated for, I was very excited to see him in more projects. I know he's big in The Walking Dead, which isn't really my thing. So I just want to see him in more movies, so I don't have to go into The Walking Dead. So yeah, hopefully this will be like a great role for him as well. Like, I'm excited for all of them at this point. So
no, I wanted to succeed.
Bring on Nope.
Yeah, let's see it.
And you heard it here. We're going to follow up next Wednesday. Miguel coming in at $90 million. It's opening weekend. I'm going to go a little higher and say 100.
Okay.
So
listen, and you know, we'll see what it is. All I'll say this is I think Nope was top 5 for me on my box office summer wager. I want to definitely
6 for me, maybe 6.
Definitely one of the most anticipated movies of the summer for me. So,
and I think that's just like the general buzz too. So this movie might just be a solid success. Fingers crossed.
This is just to cap it. This is definitely a movie that I would see in theaters because I want to enjoy it with an audience.
Yeah,
I want to see that spectacle. I missed it on the first 2, Get Out and Us. So I would love to see this with an audience.
And I mean, the trailers just make it look visually stunning. Like it really does. Like the picture is so, I don't know. It's just like very crisp, but very just, I don't know. I'm ready for it, and I might try and see this one in IMAX.
You know, they are definitely pushing that IMAX angle for this, and there's very few movies that I'm going to shell out that IMAX money for. This would absolutely be one of them. So stay tuned. We'll see how they do. Nope.
Let's do it.
Okay. Listen,
right,
I'm about to hand it over to you, but before we do, I just want to say our feature discussion today. There's a little bit of a build up to it, a little bit of a story. So we're going to be talking about that Christopher Nolan 2012 hit. The Dark Knight Rises. Ed, why are we talking about The Dark Knight Rises today?
Today specifically because it is on this day 10 years ago that it hit theaters.
That's right.
And at that same time, me, you, and Luis went
well before the podcast.
Well before the podcast. In fact, me and Miguel had another podcast in between. So
I have bitched about this movie before.
Okay? We have lived lives since this movie. I mean, because it is a decade old now, Miguel.
That's
The
right.
Dark Knight Rises is a decade old today.
Years old. Imagine having a little 10-year-old running around. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I feel like The Dark Knight wasn't that long ago. You know what I mean?
But what's wild is we're talking about it as a 10-year-old movie, but The Dark Knight came out. I mean, this was last week, I think.
Yeah.
Was just getting recognized as a 14 or 15-year-old release.
14. Yeah.
The Dark Knight was just trending earlier this week because they were reminiscing about it. And here we are. We're talking about, the other one.
The other one.
The Dark Knight Rises.
The follow-up. So, yeah. I mean, and I think, Miguel, you probably posted about this, but a year ago or so, we talked about the fact that this was going to be the weird 10th anniversary and what's weird, folks, is purely that we just collectively do not like this movie.
I think we hate this movie.
Yes.
And you were talking about it. We went and saw it. Not only did we go see it, but we saw it. AMC at the time was doing, and we were all living in Houston at the time.
That's right.
We were all under the same roof, basically.
Yep.
The AMC was running a trilogy marathon where they started the night with Batman Begins, and then they played The Dark Knight, and then right at midnight they played
The Dark Knight
Rises. So you got to really build into it. So we were at the theater for however many hours.
Yep.
My only theater experience really that I remember, other than like maybe needing to pee every now and then, was the fact that, I mean, at the time you and we were really only like 21, 22 years old. So I was still excited to like get beers in places, and AMC had just opened like their bar. And Ed, do you remember this? We got a bartender who, no shame, you know, maybe it was her first time or whatever, but every drink she poured, she was like pouring it like over her hand at the same time. Do you remember that? Like it touched a lot of her body before it touched the cup.
There's a lot of contact. Yeah, absolutely.
But I remember telling myself in the moment, very new to drinking, because I was a good boy in high school. I just remember thinking, oh, well, it's alcohol. Like it's clean. It's fine. And
not with beer. It's not that strong, man.
I am glad that I was a little buzzed for this movie, because maybe at that one moment I enjoyed it a little bit more than every other time I've seen it since then.
That's reminded me of a question, but I'll bring that up later.
You're in charge. You're in charge. Baby.
All right. So, throughout the course of 10 years, audience members, we have heard many a rant about Miguel's disdain of this movie. To no fault of his, because
I
guess
don't apologize.
What? No, you shouldn't. If anything, Chris Nolan should apologize.
Okay, I'm not going to go that far. But okay.
Chris, I know you're listening, so please write in your questions or your concerns and send us money. Before we get in it, to set the stage, obviously we have all had a history with this movie, but also I just wanted to point out a few things.
Okay.
So this movie made over $1 billion worldwide. You know, it was on it kind of surpassed The Dark Knight by, I think it was only
a little bit,
just 20 million, I think, total is what it came down to. And it scored 87% on The Dark Knight, on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Which, is actually better than most films are faring. It's definitely faring better than, say, Thor, Love and Thunder. So the movie came 4 years after The Dark Knight. It was set 8 years after those events. And so I have like a little list of questions that I'm going to be putting to Miguel. But first, I just want to go through some certain things, and we're just going to talk about it as we go along. And the purpose of this is not to go on a rant, but have an educated discussion
I will
about a movie that we all very passionately dislike.
I have made a promise to myself before we get into it.
Okay.
That, as Ed mentioned, I have spoken ill of this movie multiple times. Basically, anytime it gets brought up, I shit all over it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have promised myself and my wife, a little bit to my wife, that I will not be talking about this movie again. After this moment. Okay, so these are my definitive thoughts.
Unless you show it to Forrest.
I know I won't. I may. I may never see this movie ever again. I just finished it today before we recorded, and I was just like, and I'll share my thoughts, but this is meant to wrap up this era of Miguel's life. Okay,
sure. I feel like you treat this as most Indiana Jones fans treat Indiana Jones 4: The Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls, as it didn't happen, and the trilogy ended with The Dark Knight,
with the good one.
Right, exactly. So, all right. So we're gonna get into it. The Dark Knight Rises, everybody. We're talking about Christian Bale coming back as Bruce Wayne, Gary Oldman as Jim Gordon, Joseph Gordon-Levitt coming in as John Blake. This is his first appearance in the trilogy. Anne Hathaway as Selena Kyle, not Catwoman. Tom Hardy as Bane. Marion Cotillard as a person.
Miranda Tate.
Wink, wink. Talia al Ghul.
That's right.
Spoiler alert, by the way, if you haven't caught up in the last 10 years, that's on you.
I don't give a fuck at this point. Yeah. Don't watch this movie. Like,
it's on Netflix. Go check it out.
Spoiled. And
Michael Caine returns as Alfred, Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox, Ben Mendelsohn as John Daggett, Glenn Powell. And I only bring Glenn Powell up because he obviously appeared in Top Gun Maverick recently.
That's right.
And hopefully his career starts kicking off. But here, he's just a young stock trader. And then we've got Brett Cullen, who I also wanted to mention because we were just talking about the Joker. And he played Thomas Wayne in the first Joker movie. So, hey, full circle, he has a problem with DC movies. Juno Temple showed up.
Oh, man.
Matthew Modine and Aidan Gillen. Aidan Gillen, we were just talking about Game of Thrones. Good old Littlefinger.
That's right.
Showed up. So, the first thing I want to say about just this cast is this is a perfect example of what Chris Nolan does with his movies, is he will bring in any caliber of actor, even if it's for the shittiest of roles.
Yes.
And that's all I've got to say about that.
Okay.
Okay, so I took the liberty of kind of writing out some, basically, the major sequences of this movie, Miguel. And I want you to step in, and if anything kind of like touches a nerve, I want you to mention it. And I will just add as we go along.
Again, I just want to point out that I am not the only one who dislikes this movie. So, like,
no, I'm being, goddamn if you're not passionate.
Showcased about it, whatever. But like most people that I talk to also do not like this movie.
No, and I reaffirmed this when I brought this up with the guys at work. They were just like, "Oh yeah, that shit movie."
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like it just hasn't sat well. Clearly. Okay, so the movie opens with a plane sequence, the heist, which, Miguel, you'll recall, we went and saw in a preview to the IMAX. I want to say it was... I
know we did one where it was I Am Legend.
Oh, it was Mission Impossible.
No
was it not?
Fucking way.
It was, right?
Totally.
It was
the one where
Ghost Protocol.
Where he climbs the building.
Yeah. That's definitely what it was.
We went and saw a brief snippet of The Dark Knight before I Am Legend, where the Heath Ledger breaks into the bank, and it was
in IMAX only,
and it was phenomenal. So we did it again for The Dark Knight Rises to get that little preview. Now this was just to touch on that moment. This was pre the movie releasing. The sound editing hadn't been cleaned up yet. And it was a terrible preview for that movie because the whole scene was Bane talking in that mask, and literally no one in the theater had any idea what he was saying through that entire scene. And because of that criticism,
on top of that, it was IMAX volume.
Yeah. So it was loud.
And Chris Nolan sound mixing.
Which already is up for question.
A controversial point for all of his movies.
It
anyway,
was
carry on.
So bad. Then they later cleaned it up for the movie so that you could, because he went back and did ADR. Tom Hardy did. And the biggest complaint I have about his voice in the actual product of The Dark Knight Rises is that it never fits in the scene. It always feels like it is above what's happening, simply because that's kind of what's happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're digitally putting it in. I have so many thoughts, but I will just say right now, Tom Hardy's voice and vocal performance has never been an issue for me. We'll talk more about that as we go on, okay?
Talking of Tom Hardy's voice, I'm going to go into my Bane voice now for the next 30 minutes. Buckle up.
Oh, God.
Not really. I wouldn't do that to anybody. That is one thing that this movie brought upon the world, was this trend of Bane memes. It's not even memes, just Bane clips. Everybody thought that voice was so fucking funny. And that joke got old real quick.
This was one of those moments where I am never the guy that's like, it has to be exactly like the comic or the source material or this and that. I love when actors or films take liberties and try something new, even when it's things I like, for example, like real quick tangent, The Last of Us, the game. They're coming out
with The Last of Us TV
show. they've already diverted from the source material a little bit by having Pedro Pascal play Joel. You know what I mean? And while I could sit here and be like, nah, it's not the exact same. It's like, well, fuck, I didn't want to watch the exact same thing. Like, I'm here to see this interpretation. All that to say is Tom Hardy's interpretation of Bane and the way this character was written for this specific story, I think really fits into a lot of what Christopher Nolan was trying to accomplish. Like, the voice may sound silly, and it was really hard to understand the first time we ever heard it. But the fact that Tom Hardy commits, and I just finished the movie today again, there are very few moments where it sounds so silly that you can't take it seriously. It's almost harder to take Christian Bale seriously with his Batman voice than it is with Bane's voice throughout this movie. So take that.
It's a movie of voices for sure.
Take that for what you will.
We'll get into more as we go. I'm going to move along with the movie sequences. Okay. So after that stunning opener, which you always got to point out, Chris Nolan goes for the practical effects and the sequence itself. I mean, the stunts are clearly there. It's pretty.
I will say this. This is what I want to say about that one specific moment. Is while, and this is going to be a common theme of my complaints about The Dark Knight Rises. Okay, we saw a plane stunt in The Dark Knight that really fit into the world of that movie. That's where he captures Lau. And the plane captures them, picks them up, and they like get pulled up or whatever, this and that. And that felt very real in the moment. You felt the plane was doing it, this and that. I was a little disappointed the first time we saw that clip in front of whatever Mission Impossible movie, that it felt kind of rehashed of a stunt we had already seen. It felt like Christopher Nolan had that written down on paper for The Dark Knight, and they didn't quite do it that way. So they said, well, let's bring that back. Nah, I'm just like, whatever. Speculating, but
and at that point, Warner Brothers, I'm sure, was throwing all the money at him.
They said, "Whatever you want to do, baby, you go ahead."
Yeah,
so that was
absolutely
as though the scene itself was kind of okay. I was a little disappointed. It felt very rehashed, and that is a big note that I'm going to bring up a little bit throughout the movie. Okay, so go ahead, next scene.
Okay, as I go along, I do have like questions that refer to certain characters along the way. But if we want to talk about the scene in question, bring it up. Okay, so after that, we catch up 8 years later, following the events of The Dark Knight, and we're having a Harvey Dent memorial. Bruce Wayne has been a recluse for many years, and we get our introduction to Selina Kyle, played by Anne Hathaway. One thing I wanted to point out about this, and it leads to one of my questions, is how do you feel about Christian Bale in this movie, third time around, in a character that has already been well established?
Okay, that's how you want to start it. I got a lot of thoughts.
Yeah, let me tell you something that stuck out to me in a lot of scenes watching it this time around. Was it just felt like his accent was all over the place. Like all of a sudden he has almost like a New York accent. And there's not, I don't know, like I always felt like his Bruce Wayne was very naturalistic, not very corny, but he was very corny and put on in this one, even though that's when he's a recluse.
So,
and this is his third outing. It's still with Christopher Nolan. It's not like anything's been switched up. It just feels like a very different performance.
There was so much weight on this movie, and I'll talk about this very briefly at the start. Obviously, The Dark Knight was a huge success. Obviously, the passing of Heath Ledger affected the way they took the story. The biggest complaint I have, and this is not on Christian Bale, but it just felt as the whole movie as a whole, is every performance, every character, every storyline, Gotham City itself, all just started to feel like caricatures of what Nolan was doing with the Batman universe. You look back at Batman Begins, and it was this refresh. You know what I mean? We're here. This is what we're doing. The Dark Knight elevated it and made it like, it was like, you know what I mean? It took like your regular ramen and it fancified it. You know what I mean? It put those ingredients together that really like elevated that dish.
Sure.
The Dark Knight Rises, which already is building upon the success of, or banking on the success of its successors. The Dark Knight changed the tune from Batman Begins. Batman Begins was already kind of a weird title, but The Dark Knight solidified the trilogy. And what do we build off of? That one name.
Dark Knight Rises.
This was one of my very early complaints about this movie before I even saw the movie. It was just such a... This product was successful, so we're going to make the sequel to that product. You know what I mean? As opposed to trying to, and I've said this a ton, making the third movie its own individual thing that stood out from each individual movie. Because the transition from Batman Begins to The Dark Knight, you know what I mean, is a wild jump. But you can justify it by saying, well, Batman Begins was its one thing and The Dark Knight was another. And The Dark Knight Rises could have been titled literally anything else, really missed that opportunity to become its own product. So that you step away from all three when they're done and you go, I have three totally different things that built upon this character.
Can I say something? Yeah. And I just want to see your face reaction. We don't have to get into it. I've always hated the title Batman Begins.
So you're not wrong. Batman Begins. That's a shit title, and I don't.
It's an oversimplified.
I mean, Begins and Batman Begins.
Clearly,
it's not. Exactly. It's not good, and it does not represent the movie as well as it could. You know what I mean?
I agree.
But and so when you take a kind of a shitty title like Batman Begins and you take it and you turn it into The Dark Knight, you don't call it Batman Begins 2, you know what I mean? Or Batman 2. Right. You called it something different. So take that opportunity to have this third chapter be its own unique thing. And
what would you have called it?
Oh, well, now that you're putting me on the spot, I don't think I've ever thought about what it could have been called. I mean, it could have been simply The Batman. You know what I mean?
Oh, Bruce Wayne.
No, that's worse. That's worse. So that's what I'm saying about it. The Dark Knight Rises became from day one a caricature of the product that it was, you know what I mean? As opposed to trying to be something different. So as you're asking me about Christian Bale's performance, it's like, Christian Bale's one of my favorite actors. I don't think he really does much wrong. But the story and script for this movie just did not give him the right things to do.
It was a disservice to him.
I'm not going on a rant. You're in charge. You're gonna lead. You're gonna lead me through this.
I'm gonna lead on, but that was a question I had because those were things I felt rewatching it this time around. Okay, so after that we meet John Blake, who reveals himself to Bruce Wayne as like so many things are going wrong in Gotham, and he reveals that he knows that he is Batman.
Right away. This was one of the worst plot points of this entire movie. Okay, so it came with absolutely zero justification that Joseph Gordon-Levitt knows who Batman is. It was the most bullshit reasoning I've ever heard. You were an orphan, I was an orphan, and I saw you one day and I was like, he's Batman. That is terrible justification. I mean, it made absolutely no sense. And the fact that they just went with it and said, that's how he knows, and there was nothing else. It really, really, really makes me hate that character. But on paper, I kind of like the character. You know what I mean? I like what he does. I like how he kind of serves the plot. It obviously makes sense that Joseph Gordon-Levitt had done really well in Inception with Nolan, and Nolan wanted to reuse him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't really have a problem. And really, that's going to be another general note that I have of the whole movie is that the movie is a mess, but I think its individual parts are good. Like, I don't think really any actor other than Marion Cotillard, I don't think any actor really dropped the ball at any point. It was really just story, script wise. That was in the moment. I can even remember the moment in the theater watching that happen and sitting back going, is that what we're doing? Like that, maybe they're going to find another moment to justify it later, and they don't. You know what I mean? No. It is simply just...
that's it. It's just a fact.
You were an orphan, I was an orphan, and I saw that look on your face, and I knew you were Batman. And fuck my dick. That was just the number one, very first moment that I said, this is not a good movie.
Right. Okay, so after that, we follow Gordon. There's a whole lot of bullshit. He goes and meets Bane, not on purpose. He just ends up there. He gets captured by Bane's troops, ends up in the hospital as a result, and slowly Bruce starts getting pulled into the fight. He goes to having met Selina Kyle, he goes to a masquerade ball. Where he not only talks to Selina Kyle, he also talks to Miranda Tate. And basically, I feel like in every moment of this movie, everybody's lecturing Bruce Wayne.
Sure.
At one time, like, Alfred lectures him, Miranda Tate lectures him, and I mean, he continues to make bad decisions. And then Selina Kyle. And, you know, the funny thing about Selina Kyle watching it right now, because, you know, I'm not of the wealthy 1%, unfortunately, but I'm just like, yeah, Selina Kyle, I agree with everything you're saying.
Listen, if you know me, you know that I'm not a super big fan of Tom Hardy. I'm not a super big fan of Anne Hathaway. Yet both of them nailed what they were doing with these characters. My favorite Anne Hathaway scene really is that moment where she dances with Bruce Wayne. And I'm going to talk about that specific moment in just a second. But her Anne Hathaway's scene, where she gives him that storm is coming and there's nothing you can do to stop it dialogue.
Yeah. The whole monologue
is really good. And you can understand.
And very poignant.
You can understand how Anne Hathaway saw the character and how she made that kind of like sultry character work within the Nolan universe. You know what I mean? That is one of the few Anne Hathaway scenes in this movie that I was like, even to today, she really nails that moment. And Anne Hathaway is not my problem with this movie. Even though I'm not a big fan of her, she's not my problem with this movie.
I do love Anne Hathaway. And this actually leads, you were talking about, I feel like they brought their A game to a movie that just didn't serve them as well as they... No. And of course, they're going to bring their A game to a Chris Nolan movie. This was after the success not only of The Dark Knight, but also Inception.
Yes. Nolan was really solidifying himself as the director to work with.
And Inception did it because it was like this monumental, high-budget summer blockbuster that outside of any realm of superheroes or whatever. Yeah. Exactly. And people went to the theaters to go see that, and it was a monumental achievement in that respect. So, of course, it was going to draw some of the finest actors, especially of that time, who were up and coming. He was reusing Tom Hardy from Inception, of course, as well. And Anne Hathaway he would go on to use again in Interstellar. But this one scene, I agree with you. I found everything she said much more poignant this time around, but also at least one of my favorite scenes of hers anyway, where she takes his car. And it's a very like just like minimal throwaway bit, but like in a movie as bloated as this, I was almost grateful for it.
Yeah.
So basically they're dancing together, and at some point she obviously takes Bruce Wayne's keys. And as Bruce Wayne is leaving the party, he gives his ticket to the valet, and she's like, "Oh, your wife took your car. She said you were going to get a ride home." It's like, my wife? And then she's off driving the car. And then, of course, Alfred comes and picks him up. It's just like, I thought that was very on point with the rest of the franchise. There's just like nice little moments. It was like the the Lamborghini then moment. You know
Absolutely,
what I mean? It's just like little flourishes like that where this cast and the story works as throwaway of a scene as that is. Watching it this time, I appreciated it all the more. I had a stupid grin on my face because it's true to the characters on all fronts.
Sure.
That they've established, and it shows a little bit of levity in a movie that all too often takes itself too seriously, I feel like.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so the next big sequence after that is the attack on the stock exchange and the subsequent motorcycle chase that also leads to the return of Batman.
The big gripe I have in this movie, and I don't know why I'm saying that like it's the only one. One of the biggest gripes I have in this movie is the fact that we're 3 movies into this trilogy. We already know Christian Bale has defined this character of Batman, and yet here we are in a 3rd movie, and it's 45 minutes basically until Batman shows up again. I understand that was like how they wanted to play this story, and you kind of have to assume it's because Heath Ledger died, so they're trying to like really get away from that moment in time. And so that's why they justify this like 8-year time jump. But it just made no sense for the character to stop being Batman. You know what I mean? Really. And I understand they justify it, but it's just like when you think about the moment in Batman Begins where the prisoners all get free at the very end of the movie, and someone says something to the effect of like, you know, we're going to have to gather them all up. And The Dark Knight then plays, you know what I mean, in a different direction. You follow Batman versus the Joker, but it's like there's still a city of villains. Let's see Batman handle this city of villains for 8 years. It doesn't have to be, oh, the Joker just happened, and so now I'm only talking about the Joker for all this time.
Right.
Like, let's see him. Like, think about Robert Pattinson and Matt Reeves, the Batman. You know what I mean? It's like it became this character who you wanted to see interact with the world around him. Why did we lose this big time jump? You know what I mean? Lose this character for such a time jump.
Yeah. 8 years is a lot without any, like, what was the significance of all of these events in this movie happening right now?
Exactly. And so you ask about the stock exchange moment, and that's what I take away from it. It's just, that's when Batman shows up again for the first time. But I was just sitting there going, why, in a movie that I already know Batman is in it so little?
Yeah.
And it's the 3rd movie. Why are we waiting this long? Like, let's just get into it. I'd rather see Batman now and then later take him away from the movie because of his injury or whatever.
Right.
So the scene itself was whatever. I do think
it's very drawn out too.
And a lot of the action, like hand-to-hand combat action in this movie, does not look good.
Sloppy as hell.
This is one of the first introductions to that as a whole. So no,
absolutely.
I am kind of just, and also, so every time he's on his bat pod in this movie, like think about The Dark Knight. I remember being so fucking hyped, Ed. I remember shaking you in the theater when I realized that moment was the Batmobile doesn't exist anymore. It's about to blow up. And all this time, the Batpod has been inside this vehicle, and he bursts out of it. And he has this whole sequence on the Batpod, and it looks amazing, except for that one bit where it rides up the building or whatever. But it looks amazing. And then here in The Dark Knight Rises,
it's a build-up. It's like a...
Yes. Like, it's a moment that you were just like, I am in it.
Yeah. Self-destruct in 2 seconds.
In The Dark Knight Rises, and again, what I was saying earlier about the character thing, again, the Batpod just becomes this caricature of a vehicle that he rides. It doesn't look cool. Everything looks very just like stocky and heavy, and nothing really flows. None of the action in this movie flows well. It just looks choppy, sloppy, to what you just said. And I mean, so we see this whole chase with him on it, but it's like, I've already seen a really great chase with him on this thing. I would rather have them spent more time doing fun things with this like bat plane that he gets in this movie. You know what I mean? Like, at least take me to somewhere new. Don't just try to rehash these moments that I've already seen.
Absolutely.
So as the scene that's supposed to be the introduction to Batman in this movie, I was just like very let down, very eye rolly. I was ready to move on pretty quickly.
Yeah. So obviously this does lead into the introduction of the Bat, which is, you could refer to as the Batwing, whatever, the next level of transport for Batman. And I'm going to just say it here right now, I was never like a keen fan of the Tumbler design. I do like that old like 89 design of the Batmobile. As impractical as it is, I realize that Chris Nolan appreciates like a practical approach, and they justified it too. Like, it was a believable premise. It wasn't just like some fancy ass car with a long ass nose. Equally, I didn't care for the design of the Bat. It's just a tumbler that has...
It was like the top of the car had come off.
Exactly, and it's got drone propellers. Anyway, so we see that take off into action. We see some exchanges with Selina and Batman. We get the classic line of, "Oh, that's what it feels like," whenever Selina disappears.
I'm
going to keep going.
Okay, I'm sorry. Just, want to say Christian Bale's voice has never sounded worse as Batman than it did in The Dark Knight Rises. The Dark Knight had a couple of lines where it was like, it's odd that he's using the voice for this, but this movie specifically just really hammered home how silly that voice can sound, and the fact that he never dropped it once, or never evolved it. You know what I mean?
Because in that scene specifically, he's talking to himself, so why put on the voice?
Why the fuck are you saying it in that tone? No, that really
so after that first action, Alfred leaves. He decides to leave because he doesn't want any part.
Whatever.
And also, Wayne Industries is going under, and they need somebody to throw them money, so they bring in Miranda Tate. And then they have that scene where, Daggett, played by Ben Mendelsohn, John Daggett. I've kind of picked up more on like his involvement in the whole story this time around, because I mean, there's so much going on in this movie. It's hard to actually hone in on what everybody's part is. Basically, John Daggett facilitates Bane's overall takeover of the city by giving him financial resources, and also he's I guess the CEO of like a construction company, and that's how they end up trapping most of the police officers underground later on. Anyway, so Bane kills him in arguably a cool moment.
Yeah.
And then after that, I wrote Miranda and Bruce bang. And then we get down to it where, after a lot of talking, Batman faces off with Bane for the first time.
So that is really one of the only moments of the movie that I was like, and continually, every time I go back to it, that's the moment that I really pay attention to. It's a
moment I look forward to.
There's things leading up to it, like the fact that, again, they're really doing a lot of callbacks that I don't think are very good. Like, Kim and Catwoman are taking down all these people, and she's like, "He's behind you," and the guy goes, "Who?" And he goes, "Me, Batman." And it's like a callback to like Batman Begins, and it's just like the dialogue doesn't flow. It's really choppily edited. That build-up's not great, but then he gets to the moment with Bane, and you feel that moment. You're old now, Batman. This is like one of the only times where I felt like, okay, this is acceptable that they're playing this like old man moment.
It's very theatrical.
Yeah, and Bane and him go hand to hand, and clearly Batman is not up to it, even though previously he's already kind of said like, "Yeah, I am. I can do this because I am who I am." And then he gets there and he realizes, no, it's not the same. Very nitpicky, but the one moment of that whole fight that I really hate the most is they each do this like twirl bit where then they punch at each other, and it looks terrible. It looked terrible in a trailer. It looked terrible in the movie. It still looks terrible today. It just does no point that those punches connect or do anything, but they react. Yeah, and that's the problem. That's the problem with Nolan fight choreography in these movies, is sometimes you're like, he's punching the air, basically. You know what I mean? Like, and then this person's just reacting.
Yeah, his absolute insistence of using practical effects. This is a moment where they could have just kind of like just touched it up a little bit to make it more.
Just a little bit.
You feel that impact.
Yes.
The like he nails the theatricality, but like you said, the choreography is what lets this whole scene down. And this is like a climactic scene. Mm-hmm. Like this is what everybody was waiting for in this moment. Remember the teaser trailer? It's all dialogue, and then it opens up to that scene of Batman on that bridge. He's like backing
away from
him. And Bane is coming up the steps.
And what a moment.
What a moment. It's so cool.
And
you felt the threat.
I remember thinking in that trailer when we watched it, I said this several times in that moment, was you see Batman afraid of someone. Like he's like, he's not like in terms of Scarecrow in the first movie where he's being like hallucinating and all these things. He's like genuinely like, I'm backing up away from you because you are a threat. And that scene really does deliver on that feel for the most part. When he gets like, they end up splashing through some water, and then the way the water is like glistening, that sounds fruity the way I just said that. But
I get
what I'm saying? Like you see all these textures played differently, and the suit never looked better in that entire movie than it does in that sewer when they're fighting, and then the water splashes on them, and then
because it's in a different environment. Yeah, it's wet. Like
one of the things that Nolan talked about in Batman Begins to The Dark Knight was the fact that we had to change the suit because it looks like armor in certain lighting, but then it looks fake in other lighting, and so we had to change it up so that it felt real. And my problem with this movie is they do so much of it in the daylight, and that none of it feels real. It all looks cheap. It all looks fake. It all looks put on. But in this one moment of the movie, Ed, in this one scene, that really is my favorite, is when Bane and Batman fight for the first time.
Okay. I mean, probably the same. Like I said, it's like the one moment I like kind of just want to get to.
Yes.
At the beginning, and then it's the moment I missed afterwards.
Yes.
Because nothing else lives up to that.
No, and then Batman is gone for Ed for the rest of the fucking movie. He basically is not Batman again until the very final climactic moment. And it's just like, how many times have I seen these movies? I don't need Bruce Wayne not being Batman anymore. Like,
exactly.
Give him things to do. You know what I mean? Otherwise,
you already had the 8-year hiatus.
Don't fuck around anymore. Like, let him be Batman for a little bit. It was such a letdown that they decided to play with it that angle.
So after the fight, this is when Christopher Nolan really leans into his fictional references, because a lot of the time leading up to this movie, he was referencing A Tale of Two Cities by Alexander Dumas.
Yeah.
And so we basically see
A Tale of Two Cities is Charles Dickens, right?
Nuh-uh.
Wait a second.
I'm not gonna look.
Hang on a second. No, I'm pretty sure.
Wait, no. Wait. Hang on. You might be right. Hang on. Because I'm such an ignorant ass. It was by Charles Dickens. I'm so sorry.
Okay, all right.
I'm so sorry. It's because it was written, or part of it is based in France.
Sure.
That I thought Alexander Dumas. I'm sorry. You're right. Miguel's a genius.
This is the one time Miguel knew a book reference.
Anyway, so yeah, we get into the internal destruction of Gotham. Selina Kyle gets arrested at the gates, which brings about one of my least favorite scenes in the movie, is when she gets put into Blackgate prison. They're talking about how much of a badass she is, and this guy is like, "Hey, pussycat," or whatever, and she's like, "Yeah, honey, I'll break your fucking wrists for you," and then does this like flip. The editing is so bad in that moment.
Terrible.
It is so terrible, and you just can't help but wonder, like, could she just not perform the flip? Was there like no other way around of it? Because you just feel like, okay, you're telling us she's a badass, but
I don't see it.
I don't see it. Terrible, absolutely terrible editing. So between now, you get the football game where Bane reveals himself to the whole world, and martial law goes into effect. They start initiating these kangaroo courts led by Scarecrow.
This is where...
I think this is where the movie starts really drowning.
Absolutely loses me. I mean, and I said this recently about Thor, so it's probably a dumb common thing that I think, but this movie should have absolutely been a 2-parter finale. And I know that didn't always go over well, but the fact that Nolan was just so goddamn insistent that this is my final Batman movie, and it's very clearly like cut in half. You could have done an entire story where Batman never takes 8 years off. He's going through Gotham. He's meeting Selena Kyle. They're having a Batman Catwoman storyline. And then Bane shows up. And then they wrap it up doing the callback to the League of Shadows in a final fourth movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
totally.
It's just so convoluted and overly bloated that even watching it, this is where I paused. I paused right at the beginning of...
It's exhausting.
And it's just like, oh, great. Now I have this whole second half of this movie.
And it's not even... that's the thing. And this is one of Chris Nolan's biggest problems, is when he doesn't have a storyline that's focused, like it has like a goal. It just kind of like... It's just like a lot thrown at you. It's a lot of noise. It's a lot of dialogue. A lot of just like quick lines or like a lot of quick lines of exposition to where you're just supposed to accept what's going on, and that's it. Like there's no visual justification. There's no reason to be like emotionally attached to anything because it's moving at such a hurried pace. And it treats itself with such self-importance that it doesn't really care like whether the audience is on board or not. It's
this movie
like regularly overwhelming, and it's also very tedious. You just feel, like I said, but after you feel you want to get to that moment with Batman versus Bane. It's like moments that you kind of wait for and then just want to skip ahead to. But also
kind of want to skip on top of it. This movie should have ended. They should have done a Batman Catwoman storyline that ended with Bane being introduced at the very end and possibly breaking Batman's back as the final moment of this movie.
Kind of like Batman Begins, the way they left off and introduced the Joker very subtly.
I don't even... At this point, it doesn't even have to be subtle. Like I said, let it end with Batman getting his back broken and cut to credits. And then the second movie can be all about Bane taking over Gotham.
And call that one The Dark Knight Rises or whatever.
Fuck me. God bless. So, no. So much of this movie starts to suck immediately. I want to jump. I don't want to drag it out. So let's get to your next bit.
I'll skip it. Yeah, I'll just kind of roll through these and we'll get into it. Bruce Wayne is in the pit.
Blech.
Bruce Wayne escapes the pit. Returns to Gotham in some very shoddy editing. And there's a battle on what is essentially Wall Street. Bane versus Batman in probably what is one of the worst confrontations. Then we go on this whole just like never-ending chase of Gordon trying to lock down the bomb, which is set to destroy Gotham within 5 months, and obviously we're on like a ticking time bomb towards the end of this movie, because we're supposed to believe that Bruce Wayne is in the pit for like 5 months. This movie feels like it takes 5 months to get
absolutely
through. And so across that, you've got Gordon trying to locate the bomb. John Blake is trying to get people out of the city. After the confrontation with Bane, we reveal that Miranda Tate is Talia al Ghul. We get the very sudden and abrupt and unjustified death of Bane. There's a final chase sequence that leads to Talia's death, which is arguably the worst death in movie history.
Oh my god!
And I love Marion Cotillard, but like, fuck me. Both Christopher Nolan and her are to blame for that one.
Absolutely. No one said, "Hey, let's run that one more time." You know what I mean?
Exactly. when they should have. They're just like, let's just keep doing it until it feels right.
Wait, we're going. I know we're going really fast. I do want to touch on a couple of really quick moments in between.
I've got 2 more points.
Okay.
Yeah,
just real quick. When you were talking about Joseph Gordon-Levitt, John Blake, or whatever, trying to get the people out of the city, his one shining moment for me, because I'd like to find a good moment for all these characters. His one for me was when he tries to tell the police officer on the other side of the guard or whatever, we're coming across, like, we need to do this. We need to get these people out. There's no hope. We need to get these people out now. Don't fuck around and find out. And they blow the bridge anyway. And he just has this moment where he's like, you killed us, you sons of bitches, you killed us. And I really think that was like the best Joseph Gordon-Levitt moment of this movie. And it's not his fault. The script is shit, but I thought in that moment he nailed it. Like, I felt his anger. I felt his despair. I felt in that moment being like what it would be like to be on that side of the line where you go like, great, I'm going to die now.
And like, obviously the context of that moment is supposed to lead him to taking the mantle of the Batman. Like, he's an officer who's followed the rules,
but he can't anymore. And, you know what I mean?
He can't anymore. He used his gun and he didn't like it.
He threw it away.
And he killed 2 guys and didn't like it. So I kind of agree. Like, I feel like for every character there's a moment.
Yeah. And I actually, and as much as I've talked shit about this moment, about how I hate the fact that Bane really should have been the main character, but then they kind of like, they pull the rug out from under him by making him like this, you know what I mean, whatever, bodyguard, henchman. But at the same time, Tom Hardy, again, in this moment very well. Is really beautiful. That single tear that comes out, which can be kind of corny, is like, you really feel it in that moment. You all of a sudden kind of understand the justification for why he would fight for her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm not a big Tom Hardy fan, but his character was pretty good through most of this movie, and I did enjoy that moment right before he gets shot to shit, and you're like, what the fuck just happened? Anyway, you have 2 more points. Anyway, we're going through.
Yeah. So there's a bomb. Batman decides to fly it out of town, using autopilot or whatever. It blows up. Everybody thinks Batman's dead. There's the aftermath. Everybody remembers the Batman. Alfred goes to Italy. He thinks he sees Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle there in Italy while he drinks his Fernet Branca or whatever the fuck, because that's what we're told he does every year. And then Joseph Gordon-Levitt is left a little thing in Bruce Wayne's will that leads him to the Batcave, that leads him to be the new Dark Knight at the end of the story.
I didn't hate that moment. I love
that moment. I actually thought was one of the coolest shots of the whole film.
You know what I mean? And him showing up there and then literally rising out of the water like that, it can be kind of whatever, but they really nail that moment. And it's
moments like that make Christopher Nolan a great filmmaker, but overall,
I don't want to say it's 100% on par with this moment, but it's reminiscent of what Nolan does, where like at the end of Inception, is the top still spinning kind of deal. You then at the end of this moment, when the credits go, you immediately start daydreaming about Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Batman. You start thinking about the moment beyond this where I don't see it. And I think that's what Nolan does great, is he gives you the story overall that makes you want to, that's convoluted and it makes you want to come back to it. But it also...
And he definitely uses that imagery that leaves you almost wanting more to that effect,
I kind of would have liked to have seen what is Joseph Gordon-Levitt going to be like as Batman, but because the movie was such shit, I don't want to at the same time. You know what I mean? So a lot of moments that I'm later looking back on and going, these were good, but just overall, what an incredible letdown of a film.
Absolutely. That was the whole movie. Thanks for sitting with us if you're still with us. I'm going to go into some questions here. We've already kind of answered some, so I'll skip a few, just for the sake of brevity. We'll do like rapid fire. Exactly. So what was it on your first viewing that stood out to you in this film? Like, if you could name one thing that started to make you realize, like, this is not what I wanted, and or this
so
is
first
not a
off,
good
yeah,
film.
the two. I'll just reiterate a couple of real quick points. The fact that Batman wasn't Batman for 8 years didn't make any sense to me at all. It just really took the air out of the wind out of the sails for Batman, and also Joseph Gordon-Levitt being like, "I know you're Batman." That was very early on where I was like, "Oh shit, this is gonna suck."
Yeah. There was a lot of... So, one thing I remember is just like, there's just like a lot of talking at me. Like, you've got all these new characters that are just kind of telling you what we should supposedly already know. You know what I mean? And it's just not... It's not good writing. It's just all very exposition.
For a trilogy, for the third movie, we're already in it.
Yeah.
Don't tell me anything else. Let's just get...
Like, start the story of this chapter.
Yes.
And that's it. Yeah. What is one vital thing that you would change that would, at least in your eyes, make it better? One thing. Again,
I think I'll just reiterate a point I just said. They really should have just had this be two-parters. Let it be a Batman Catwoman story first, and then a Batman Bane story last. Ed, something you and I fanficked at the very early days that we had just seen this movie was let Christian Bale climb out of that hole and Bane be waiting there and push him back in and let him die. And let the whole last act of the movie be Joseph Gordon-Levitt
as Batman. Gordon-Levitt taking the mantle,
Commit one way or the other, you know what I mean? Now, that's a fanficky that can be kind of bullshit. I'm sure people are rolling their eyes to that, you know what I mean? But at the same time, it's like you've already done such shit character work with Bruce Wayne in this movie. Like, at least be bold at some point and let us think he is... Like, when you think The Dark Knight Rises, you're thinking of him crawling out of that hole, but really it's Joseph Gordon-Levitt at the end becoming Batman. You know what I mean? And it's like, let's just let the whole last act be that. You know what I mean? At least it would be interesting and give me something new.
Yeah, absolutely. There was one thing that I wanted to mention that stood out to me was when we get reintroduced to Batman, when he comes back for the first time in that tunnel, I guess, that freeway tunnel, or whatever. I found that whole sequence so just like flat and unexciting or uninspired. It's just like you've got a cop telling you, "Oh, you're in for a treat tonight." It's like it's not really. He just rode past you and turned off the lights. Like, very undramatic and not very fun. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like you want. It's moments like that when you just need to lean into the fact that you're making a movie about Batman. Yes. Yeah, make it fun, not just like okay. He's got a new gadget.
So again, just talk about like moments where they're. Really just become caricatures. Think about in The Dark Knight when Christian Bale, Batman, is standing on the top of that building, and it's like the blue of the evening, and he's like listening to the whole city trying to find the Joker, and then he gets a clue, and then he goes after it. They did another scene where it's like Batman's on this tall thing, but it looked like absolute shit. He's like standing on the thing. It's right before he meets Catwoman again. Before he fights Bane. He's standing on this like radio tower, which is like, why are you even up there? You look like you're about to fall. He's holding the cape really funny because like the wind or whatever, but it's really making it bloat and look funny. And it doesn't have this like, it doesn't have a feel at all that it's like cinematic or comic booky or cool. It just looks so bad. And these are those moments where it's like every time they tried to look cool, they just became, I'm going to say it for the millionth time, caricatures of what they were trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that was bothering me was just they never established the threat or the conflict between Bane and Catwoman.
No, they tell you, but you don't ever really get a sense. There could have been a scene, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, imagine that scene. One scene
would have justified Bane's death.
Imagine Bane versus Batman, but it's Catwoman instead. You know what I mean? Where you get this moment where they're both supposed to be, really talented, whatever. They
could have done it at Blackgate Prison when he breaks everybody out. They could have done it when she brings Batman to him. Again, they just kind of tell you that she's under threat of these guys. So wasted. All right, what is one minor quibble that you know is minor but annoys you regardless every time you watch it?
Aidan Gillian playing, I almost said Littlefinger. His role in the beginning, there's a scene in Jurassic World where Chris Pratt does this like hip dance when he gets on the elevator. And Aidan Gillian does something very similar in this movie when he's got the gun and he's using it. He's using it to talk a lot. And he's like, who wants to stay on my plane? And I'm like, stop dancing around. Like, you look so silly. You're putting on this American accent. It's such a minor thing because it's like, he's like, hell yeah, I'm in fucking Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight Rises.
As I'm sure everybody
I'm not trying
was.
to dog him too much, but it was like, that was like acting wise for a minor thing. Like, that was definitely one of those moments where I was like, you're so, I'm so glad. I'm so glad this shit is over. That's how I felt.
One of my quibbles is every action sequence where somebody grabs somebody's arm that's holding a gun, and they just point it at something and it shoots, as if it's like, oh, well, once you grab onto somebody's forearm, you can control how they handle a gun. Bane does it, Batman does it. It's fucking stupid, and I hated it. Terrible choreography. Anyway, what is the saving grace, if any, of this film for you? Like, what is one thing that you're just like, I love this bit, or I love this character, or I love this moment?
It really is
whatever.
The Batman versus Bane sewer fight. That really is, the only moment that is, you're here for it. Oh, you could also like go a little meta with it and say, I thought the trailers built up a good hype about it. Like, I was into the trailers when they first came out.
Totally. Absolutely. My answer's basically the same. We've kind of talked on this a bit, so there's really not much more we can say about it. I was going to ask you about how you felt about the main extra characters of Tom Hardy, Anne Hathaway, and Talia al Ghul. Of the lot of them, I feel like Anne Hathaway probably does the best job. And probably not to anybody else's fault. I just feel like she suited that character and she did the best what she had. And also, she did a great job with the physicality of that character. But it just felt like all of these characters were used poorly overall anyway. So I'm just going to skip over that. A lot of the debate on this one, and is such a common debate with most trilogies, is how a trilogy concludes. And more often than not, the third entry always comes with a little disappointment or whatever. I'm thinking of like The Godfather Part 3, The Return of the Jedi, Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, Jurassic Park 3. Like, all of these trilogies that kind of fall when they come to their third movie. Whether their second one was the best or not, regardless, I was just wondering, in general, even if you were just looking at the overall picture, do you think this movie is just too much of a letdown to conclude it? Or, do you think it's like, decent enough on a Christopher Nolan?
Absolutely the biggest letdown of not only the Dark Knight trilogy, but to me is easily, you could point to this as the weakest Nolan movie. You know what I mean? Like with something like Tenet, you might be able to say some people got it, some people didn't, yada yada. But this is just one of those where it's you could point to every criticism you have about Christopher Nolan's whole take on film, you know what I mean, can be pointed to at this movie and say, this is where he failed at this point. You know what I mean? It's just all of his flaws or faults, which you kind of want to ignore when he's got a really great movie, are just front and center. And it is just, one of the biggest letdowns. I remember thinking before the movie came out, of all the trilogies that suck, Christopher Nolan's going to be the first that really nails this moment. And I will say it's not, I so far have not seen a movie that really nails the ending. I really think you get a much better shot at TV when they end seasons, you know what I mean? When they end series, excuse me. Like Breaking Bad is the thing that I will always point to and say, that's how they nailed a story.
Even then, it's like rare.
Exactly. So I chalked it up to just another one, just
Yeah.
another one that's gonna obviously not do well.
Absolutely. I think I've said this before. I feel like this movie is singularly the best example of all of Christopher Nolan's problems.
Absolutely.
When it comes to his filmmaking style, as far as editing, sound editing,
direction of like acting,
exposition, like it just kind of all falls apart like one after the other, and you just feel like
this
his
is a
heart
movie
wasn't there.
That is
like,
just, you know what I
clearly.
mean? None of the parts worked, but it wasn't because of any of the parts. You know what I mean? I think that everyone was in a good role for the most part and did what they were setting out to do. It just was not. It was just not executed well. And that's my thoughts. Right. Those are my thoughts on The Dark Knight. Otherwise, I'm going to end up.
Let's see your thoughts. Well, let's go on to our fellow Luis's thoughts. He sent me some things. Just I'll read through it quickly. But he obviously is on the same page as us as far as our feelings. I don't think I know anybody who comes at me and says like, movie. "Oh man, I love The Dark Knight Rises." Yeah. So Luis's thoughts are: I honestly haven't seen the movie since because I've never really felt compelled to go back. On paper, the overall plot sounds interesting, but experiencing it, I get a little bored in the middle of it all. You have that great face-off between the two characters, but they feel sidelined throughout the movie, and then the movie is about what? Bruce Wayne rising up again after going through that arc somewhat before. It didn't feel different enough for it to thrill me. I'm happy he has a happy ending, but the journey was just not compelling as its other ones. Batman Begins had a great tone, Dark Knight had great characters, but The Dark Knight Rises feels a little dry for my taste. Again, I haven't seen it in a long time, and maybe watching it again will change my mind, but I will complain about this small dumb thing. I cannot stand how the chanting in the cave does not match the lips of the people in the cave. My brain breaks.
That's what you're talking about with that Nolan sound editing. You know what I mean? It's like we're just supposed to just take you for your word that this shit's good, but it's not.
Yep. And lastly, we asked for it, so I have to talk about it. We got a few listener questions regarding this movie. We'll see how serious they are. Let's see. Bryce on this movie said, I haven't seen it since I saw it in theaters, and that is on purpose. So, you get the point. But let's see what questions people had. Okay. The Movie Gap, our fellow podcasters, asked, why did Heath Ledger die? And I actually wrote down the reason. It was an accidental drug overdose of prescription medication. So Chase, I hope that answers your question. Has the Bryce of the same podcast asked, has there been a bigger letdown in cinema history? I mean, the answer is yes.
Third movies
for a lot of, I feel like for a lot of franchises, like eventually everything's gonna hit a lull. We've mentioned a few already, where the third, like I said, the third Godfather was a disappointment to a lot of people. So I think there's a trend. It just depends how passionate you are about said franchise.
There you go.
As far as disappointment goes. All right.
That's it.
That's all I got, Miguel.
We're almost done.
We did it. If we have anybody still listening, and you have contrary thoughts to anything we've just said about The Dark Knight Rises, if you like this movie, I want to hear why. If you... I think we all do. Please give us your full reasoning, and if you think we were wrong at just about any certain points, please let us know. and we'll give you a shout out on the next episode since we'll have Luis back. But fortunately, that's 10 years on, and we won't be back for the 20th anniversary.
Sayonara, The Dark Knight Rises. Listen, you guys, we've gone a little long. That was our thoughts on The Dark Knight Rises. We are going to do just a very quick, like maybe Ed, like 5 minutes here. Just real quick, letting you guys know what we're into. This is how we like to end our episodes. Just real quick, I am just now getting into The Boys Season 3. It's been a second since I've sat down and watched The Boys, but I'm being reminded every episode why this show is so good. If you are not watching it, we've already talked about it a lot already. You should be. Ed, I feel like you would enjoy it. Give it a shot.
Miguel, I will say I tried to start episode 1 of season 3 today because you told me that they have like a little retrospective.
I might have been
going into it.
Sure.
But I can tell you, I had no fucking clue what was going on.
Fair enough.
I got as far as the man who shrinks down going into the penis and then blowing up the guy.
That was fun.
And all of that to say, I'm intrigued, and maybe I will go back and watch the show.
I was maybe a little ambitious. I just wanted you to start it. I do hope you just watch The Boys at some point, okay?
There's a lot of context there, obviously.
Yeah, and it's so good. It's so good, okay? You're going to really enjoy it. The only thing I want to talk about really quickly is you guys know that I'm super into shitty reality TV show competitions. We watched one just yesterday. We watched only one episode, and it was so bad that I had to let you know about it. It's called Sing On. Okay, it's on Netflix. It's a singing competition show where 4 or 5 people. If you watch The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Titus Burgess, he's the host of the show.
Cool.
And he's a lot of fun. But it's 5 people, and they're basically singing songs where the lyrics are projected on the wall, and each of them gets a snippet of the song to sing, and then they all sing the song all together. And whoever is like the most on pitch or perfect, you know what I mean, adds more dollars to the bank. It's kind of like Weakest Link, where they answer questions and add money to the bank. You know what I mean? But you have to have to sing perfectly to get as much money as you possibly can. And Ed, let me just tell you really quick, because I'm wrapping up my thought, is every single person who on that show was a terrible singer. Every bit. And they were like, oh, she's fucking nailing it right now. And I was like, no, she fucking is not. And it was one of the worst singing competitions I had ever seen in my life. There was one bit where this girl was like first off,
so it's
the entire first episode of this entire premise, and the second song they made everyone sing was fucking Sia's Chandelier. You're like, that is one of...
I love that song.
Oh, who doesn't? But it's one of the hardest fucking songs to sing ever. And they have all these people just absolutely bombing all of these notes. But they're like, oh, didn't she do great? No, she didn't. Sing On. Sing On Netflix. You guys enjoy it. Have a good time.
Don't watch it.
That's me. So what are you into right now? What have you been watching?
All right, I do have a lot to get through, but I'll keep it brief. But there's 2 main things that I want to talk about. Last week, I mentioned The Gray Man was coming to theaters shortly before its Netflix release, and I'm that guy who's gonna just like hammer home the theatrical experience. So yes, I did go and see it in theaters.
Thumbs up or down?
And thumbs up. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a solid action film. Is it like the best action film? Is it like original? No, not necessarily, but it does have fun all the way throughout. You've got the Russo brothers directing, so there's like, and also I believe they're working with their writer from the Captain Americas and stuff like that. So the action is always very interesting and very fun. It's basically Ryan Gosling versus Chris Evans throughout most of this film. And both of them are having such a good time. Chris Evans especially so. He's just like really digging into this bad guy, polar opposite of Captain America character. Like in one scene, he's yelling at his dead men and calling them morons. He's just so like really hamming it up, but in a great way. I think the chemistry is great between them. Ana de Armas is in it. She does a great job too. It's solid action. It's not like Mission Impossible action where, you know, there are moments where I did feel like, if Tom Cruise was doing it, it'd be for real. but like, you know, and like maybe like 2 scenes where I felt like the CGI kind of lets it down a little bit.
Great. Yeah.
But overall, and we were talking about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood earlier.
Yeah.
There's a character in this movie, the girl from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the young girl actress who's talking to Leo DiCaprio's character on set. Yeah. Uh-huh. She's in this movie. She's the I don't know, the emotional drive for Ryan Gosling's character to prevail.
Okay.
But man, like, this movie knows what it is. It is just like a pure action movie. Like I said, it's not trying to break barriers, but what it does well.
Real quick.
And I was never bored. Go ahead, sorry.
Let me ask you, did you really feel like it was necessary to see it at Cinemark, or did you think you could have watched it on Netflix?
No, I will say I'm glad I saw it on the theater.
Okay, we won't get into it. That's all.
But I for anybody wanting to watch it at home, I feel like it's a solid, entertaining movie. Like, if you feel like throwing on a fun action movie, this is it for sure.
What else you into?
Secondly, I finally got to see Elvis. It's been out for a couple of weeks. Baz Luhrmann's new film. Hands down, I think this was a really good movie. I preferred it to The Great Gatsby. I preferred it to Australia. I think this is his best movie since Moulin Rouge. I think he really nails the persona and the icon that was Elvis Presley. It doesn't get into the deep and gritty about him. It is very surface level as far as a biopic goes, but it's told in the style and the with the energy that Baz Luhrmann generally brings to his movies. So it's very just like energetic, very flamboyant throughout. But man, they really, I feel like leading into this movie, a lot of people were saying how Austin Butler just doesn't look like Elvis. But man, does he really capture that
vibe?
Like, he nails it. There's not one moment in this film where I felt like, no, that's not Elvis. Like, he really captures it. He really sells it. He does such a great job. I hope he's in the Oscar run this year. But
okay.
It was a good. It was a good.
Speaking of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
He was also in it. Yeah. Uh-huh. So, hey, we need to just talk about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But yeah, no, he's really good. Hopefully this opens up a ton of opportunities for him, because
all right.
He's already lined up to be in the next Dune movie, but he does an incredible job. And to that effect, he really is the star of the movie. Tom Hanks is obviously in it, and he plays the Colonel, who was Elvis's manager and ultimately ended up screwing Elvis out of a lot of money. He was taking like 50% of his pay, and kept him on basically a tight leash. And it's a very like complicated relationship that they never really get to the core of. Like, you always, I felt I was left wondering, like, why did Elvis let this go on for so long? Like, it's really fucked up. And clearly they're both under very different ideals of how Elvis's career goes. But on that same, like, to that effect, I mean, like, this is Elvis's story, and you get, like, the biggest argument being was, like, you know, he was more addicted to the love of his audience than anything else.
Than the drugs?
Than his family, than the music. Like, that was it. And they really drive that point home at the end of it. It's a very touching ending. I feel like the perspective of Tom Hanks's character was a little misjudged. I don't think they needed to tell it in his perspective. Like, there are scenes that cut back to him where, because like, it starts out with him, his character, the Colonel, on his deathbed. You don't really need that. It, like, every now and again it'll cut back to him in this like old age makeup and shit, and you're just like, it takes you out of it. When Elvis isn't on the screen, you
don't care.
You don't care. But to that effect, I think it was a very effective movie. I don't think there are very few directors who could have captured that, the power of Elvis's stature, you know, like, to a T, I felt like it captured those moments where you felt the audience swooning over him. And, just like when you see those videos of girls screaming at the Beatles and Elvis or Marilyn Monroe, it's like they capture that really brilliantly. So overall, I think this movie nails it in that regard. If you're looking for like a deep down, like behind the curtains look, this isn't it. But if you like Baz Luhrmann, if you like Elvis Presley songs, this is it. And even it does feel long at times, but overall, I was never really bored.
Okay. That's you, though. You're pretty good at that.
That is me. That is me.
And then lastly... Speaking of going long, Ed, we're wrapping up. What do you think?
We're getting there. Lastly, and I'm only doing this because I said I would.
Yes.
Also out on Netflix this last week is a Jane Austen adaptation of Persuasion, starring Dakota Johnson.
Okay.
I almost said Dakota Fanning.
Yeah.
It's not Dakota Fanning. Anyway, this is a new Jane Austen adaptation, straight to Netflix. And, there are a lot of Jane Austen fans out there. Mm-hmm. I'm one of them. So my younger sister had some thoughts on it. She's like an avid Jane Austen fan. And she had some quick thoughts, which I'm just going to quickly read.
Let's go.
All right. Thoughts about... this is Georgina Crombie, by the way. Shout out, Georgie. I mix her and Lily up very frequently. Thoughts about Persuasion. I really loved some bits and didn't like others. I've read Persuasion and all of Jane Austen's books twice and seen other film renditions of it. So I did have high expectations going into it. I really liked the actors they chose for Anne Elliot and Captain Wentworth. I assume that's the central couple. I think they fit their roles well. I think it had a beautifully romantic ending, just like you want with a Jane Austen story. However, I did not like the random modern twists they put in there, like the background music and the use of modern phrases like my ex and self-care. They also took the sarcasm and humor a lot further than the book. Speaking of humor, Anne Elliot's little sister, Mary Musgrove, is hilarious. Some people believe that Persuasion is Jane Austen's own love story, but tweaked to have a happy ending. Side note, she never married. If that is true, it's a very important story. I watched it a second time and enjoyed it a little more because I knew what to expect. I am guessing serious Jane Austen fans won't be too thrilled because they did change a lot. And why mess with perfection? And that's it. So, Georgie, thank you for that input. We want to... We talk about very specific movies throughout here. I thought it'd be good to branch out and just get some feedback from other movies that us three may not catch up on. But, so there you go.
You guys can always let us know your thoughts at Punch Drunk Nerd on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Patreon, on Twitch, I can't think of the rest of them. So make sure you guys are following us there. Shout out to Georgina. You guys, we went a little long. I knew it was going to happen because it was me and Ed. We're over here.
And we're talking about The Dark Knight Rises.
You got to talk some shit. All right. So you guys, every episode, every Friday we release a new episode. You guys keep following along. Check us out. I've been your host for tonight, Miguel Sanchez, joined by...
Ed Bull.
We miss you, Luis. We're going to catch you next week. We're going to hear a lot more about Comic-Con in the days to come.
Hell yeah.
And as always, later, Gators.
Later, Skaters.